special board meeting of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District for Saturday, January 23rd, 2021. It's just after 8 a.m. Peter, may we have the roll call?
Sure. Rickert,
Here.
Epstein,
Here.
Perot,
Yeah.
Dornbrook here.
Eric, do you have any announcements for us today?
I'd just like to welcome one of the larger classes we've had in our Zoom meetings for the special board meeting. If you'd like to make a comment, we ask that you use the raise your hand function, and all votes of the board will be via roll call.
Okay. Are there any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar?
Yes.
Please.
Two things. So first, there is a minor edit that need to be done in the minutes. So you can pull them out.
Okay.
And then I also have some comment on the appointment to committees.
Okay, so we will pull those two consent items. Okay, thanks, Bertrand. Are there any comments from the audience today that on items not on today's agenda?
We have
Eric?
one from Supervisor Brown.
Jeff?
Okay, there's Amador County Supervisor Brown. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can, Jeff. Thank you.
Cool, because I've been having problems lately. Yesterday was one of the first rounds we had for 75 and above for the COVID virus clinic here. And so we went out under e-notifications through the Amador County. So if you know somebody that is 75 and above that has a computer, to get on e-notifications through Amador County website. Also on Tuesday, we'll be talking about Highway 88. They're gonna be closing down part of 88 near Irishtown Road. That is where the arrow is in the building for a culvert repair. 88 should stay open with minimal controls, but there will be offset in lanes. So we'll be talking about that during our meeting. And that's what I have right now.
Great, Jeff. Thanks so much. Thanks for attending as well.
Question, Supervisor Brown, are they going to reroute via Ridge Climax then for those coming from 49 from the north?
No, they're going to keep two lanes open because it has a turning lane, but the turn off of Irishtown, it's really going to hurt the people in the backside right there because they're going to completely shut that off.
Gotcha.
So will be a lot more traffic rolling into Pine Grove off of, I think it's Clinton.
Yeah.
And so there'll be a lot more traffic at that standpoint where people making left to go down the hill.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Woodrow has a comment. Eric?
Okay, Terry, welcome, Terry.
Hey, so I'm in day 5 of a power outage here in Bear Valley since that windstorm event on Monday, Tuesday. So in regards to the COVID vaccine, Alpine County is open to 65 and older. So if you want to get on the list, you need to call the warm line, which is 530-694-1011. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Terry. Hope you get your power back soon.
You.
If you want a better provider, we're open.
Thanks.
Any other comments from the audience?
I do not see any, Eric.
Okay, thanks. Okay, written comments from the public. There's nothing in the packet. I just do want to note that we did receive a written letter of resignation from Standish, which will be distributed. Also, yesterday or maybe the day before, we also got a written letter of resignation from Nancy Trevette, who has apparently sold her home. She's been a long-serving member of the Finance Committee, and so she has resigned from that. Okay, we'll go on to item 7, which is the adoption of the consent calendar. And we are pulling the meeting minutes and the appointments. So this is for items 7B and 7C. Approve the current consent for claims and review the receivables shutoffs report. Is there a motion to adopt those 2 items?
Dornbrook, so moved.
Epstein seconds.
Okay, a roll call.
Rickard,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay. Bertrand, go ahead and for
Yes.
7A, the meeting minutes.
Yes. So on the minutes, if you could go to the section.
Give me a page, that'd be great.
Yes, I'm trying here. Section 13.
Page 13 or section 13?
No, section 13, page 7.
Got it.
So in here, we actually describe the formation of a ad hoc committee. And I didn't actually report that earlier because I was not 100% sure, but yesterday night I did check the recording. And there is also a member on that meeting that has been appointed from Vel. And I think I didn't understood right perfectly the name. It's Dan Gable, or I'm not sure the name.
Dan Deemer.
Dan Deemer, right, Bertrand, that's correct.
And it's not showing up in the minute.
Ah, okay. Good catch. And now 7D, approve appointments to committees. Was that the,
Should we, you should probably entertain a motion to
Ah.
approve the minutes as amended.
okay, one at a time, okay. Do we have a motion?
Dornbrook, so moved.
Is there a second?
I
please?
can't. Okay.
That's Bertrand. Roll call.
Rickard,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay. Now 7D, Bertrand.
So on 7D, so actually, I'm not going to vote in support of this ad hoc committee. The reason is I think this is unitarily decided. I have not been consulted at all. I personally believe this kind of project could be part of the planning committee. But anyway, I just disagree with how this meeting has been formed. I don't think it was, and so I was not going to vote in support for it.
What did you say was predetermined, or I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. You basically I'm stuck in my mouse here. Unitarily created, maybe with probably discussing between you and Eric, boss Eric. You decided to create this meeting. You decided who would be on it. No chair of any committee has been consulted. I think that's not the way we should work as a board.
I see. Okay. Well, my feeling, just so you know, I wanted representation from the planning committee at director level. That's why I asked Peter to chair the committee. This is the way ad hoc committees are formed, but your point is noted and taken. I'm sorry if you feel left out.
Yeah, and so now if I can go more in detail on that specific committee.
No, we can't
okay,
talk.
Yeah,
we can't talk about the committee itself. But
okay.
Tell you what,
So-
Bertrand, when we go to general discussion, why don't we bring that up and try to resolve it?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So now let's ask for a motion to approve the appointments as noted in the consent calendar. This is really several appointments.
Yeah, this is the appointments, the Vail employees.
Vail employees to the
Three
various
different
committees.
Standing committees. That's all that I believe the current appointments are.
Yeah, so this is not to the OGALS.
OGALS, no.
This was just the appointments to the standing committees. So one to
Correct.
planning, one to operations.
Where is
Yeah.
that in the packet? I'm sorry.
I don't know. Should be right after, but I don't think it's there.
Because, yeah, I couldn't find any reference to it. So I thought we're referring to the OGALS committee.
No, I think Jess submitted the ones that we received from
Right.
Vale.
Can we
Okay.
at least read the names into the
Yeah.
minutes?
I
If I
can,
remembered them, we could.
Yeah, it's Dan
Deemer is
Deemer
on
and
ops.
Greg
Right.
Kissick.
Yeah. So what may I suggest we actually separate, we do two motion, one to approve the other people not related to the ad hoc committee. So I can vote yes. And then another motion for the ad hoc committee that I would vote no.
sure. Just a second. I'm bringing up the committee members, just so you know what they are. Okay. We were appointing Dan Deemer to operations, Greg Kiskinen to planning, and Eric Tiffany to finance. Those are the Vale employees that we were appointing. And we can make a motion on that, Fairchand.
Yes, please.
Fine. Okay,
So I move to appoint these three people to the three corresponding committee.
okay. And is there a second to that?
This is Bob, I'll second.
And may we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Rickard,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay. As far as the OGALS ad hoc committee, I'm not quite sure what to do about that. It's already started to meet, right, Peter?
Yeah, we had our first meeting and we had some good volunteers. We have Ann Oppenheimer and Carolina Wellbrun as two volunteers for the committee. And we have our next meeting is scheduled for next week, I believe.
And Tommy Baggett is representing.
And Tommy Baggett is pretty much running the meeting, taking minutes.
And Dan Deemer's also been invited to have someone from Vale, right?
Yeah, Dan Deemer, he had participated in our first meeting. We had a real good discussion about why the committee was formed, what our goals were, and then we kicked around some ideas. We didn't vote on anything yet.
Yeah. Well,
But,
I'd be certainly happy, and then we shouldn't, because we shouldn't have this conversation particularly right
okay,
now.
sure.
But
sure.
I'd be quite happy to have the ad hoc committee basically report to the planning committee. That would be fine.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you want me, when I participated in a planning committee meeting, report what the ad
Just
hoc committee is?
Yeah, and Bertrand, I just recommend that you have that as an agenda item for as long as the committee's in place.
I'm not saying anything because I thought we are not supposed to discuss
Yeah,
here, but we
we're not.
have it on the agenda lower. So I think we could discuss all that when we have the item on the agenda later in the meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. So let us now move on to item 9A, which is a resolution, adoption of resolution 21-01, recognition of Standish O'Grady. So we have a resolution here. It's a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District honoring Director Standish O'Grady for 9 years of service. Whereas Standish O'Grady assumed office in November of 2011 and served for 9 years on the Board of Directors, serving as president of the board of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District from December 2013 through December 2015. And whereas Director O'Grady participated in and contributed significantly to the affairs of the district in a consistent and fair manner. And whereas during his public service on the board, Director O'Grady was active with development, financing, and construction of the electrical transmission line to Kirkwood. And whereas Director O'Grady served the Kirkwood community and district with great determination and dedication. And whereas during Director O'Grady's tenure as a board member for the district, he also served as chairman of the Personnel Committee, most recently chairman of the Finance Committee, and served on the Operations and Information Technology Committees. And whereas Director O'Grady showed great dedication and commitment to the district and the Kirkwood community previous to his tenure on the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District Board of Directors,
Thank you.
now therefore be it resolved that the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District does hereby express deep appreciation to Standish O'Grady for his many hours of public service to the people of Kirkwood, California. And on a personal note, Standish, I just want to thank you for the many years of advice and counsel, your ability to cut to the core of issues, and particularly your ability to see the big picture and provide wise counsel to me and to the community. And I'm looking forward to that at least continuing. So thank you, Standish.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with each and every one of you.
And I'd like to invite if anyone else has a comment for Standish at this point.
This is Bob. I'd just like to say that we were limited to 1 page on this resolution for reasons which I don't fully understand, but won't argue with. But I would also like to recognize both for Standish and after that for Cheryl and also Ann O'Grady that the effort to rebuild the playground really started with those people. And although we won't be able to enjoy it until this coming summer, I want to recognize that that was just an omission on this page that wasn't intentional. It was just due to space limitations. And Standish is the one that got me involved with the district as well. So I very much appreciate his friendship and his commitment to the district, to the community.
Thank you all.
Are there any other comments?
Howard Hoffman has his hand raised, Eric.
Howard.
Yeah, Standish, I'd just like to thank you too for the way that you helped change the whole direction of the board. You came up with the concept of power reliability as being a real key deficit here at Kirkwood, and you followed us through that whole process, including having to change the whole board. So I appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
And Bertrand.
Yes, so while I have not seen eye to eye on every topic with Standish, I also totally support this resolution and recognize all the effort and inspiration that Standish has provided to this district and community.
Great, thank you, Bertrand.
Howard has one more thing to add, I think.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, okay. Your hand
down.
went up again.
Yeah, I would just like to concur with everything that's been said. And it's been a pleasant 9 years, and it's been very educational for me. And you really helped the community evolve, and we'll miss you.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, Eric.
Yeah, no, it's only a little over 3 years, and it's been a really fun experience and some really good guidance from Standish. I think probably the thing I like most is all the stories he told me about the olden days. Those were probably my favorites. How things evolved over time and helped me understand a lot more about the district and why things are a certain way they are. And we do have a plaque for you. I'd like to share, and we'll get this to you. And it says, Director Standish O'Grady, expounder of electricity, proponent of playgrounds, foe of fiscal failure, Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District, 2011 through 2020.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So we
And
got the playgrounds in the plaque. Don't worry, it's there.
And that is a segment of our cable coming up Highway 88.
Yeah.
That's our 34.5. So Direct Barry.
Cool.
You should save it because it may be handy as a spare part.
Standish, are you going to be around this next week at all, do you think, with the storm? Or
Yeah, I'm going to come over today.
just let me know and I have it for you. So
Thank you.
Well, congratulations, Standish, on your move, and thanks again for everything you've done for us.
Thank you for your kind words.
We'll now move on to resolution number 21-02.
Do you want a motion?
Well, we
Oh, I'm
need to
sorry.
approve this.
We need to approve
We need the
2101. Sorry,
motion.
Standish.
Let's see if
Sorry,
we can
Standish.
find 4 votes.
Yes.
You can.
You only need
sit
3.
in the corner.
Is there a motion to adopt resolution number 21-01?
This is Bob. I would love to be the one recommending adoption, resolution 21-01.
And this is Eric, and I would love to second that. All in favor? Let's see. Roll call, Peter.
Rickard,
Aye.
Epstein,
Absolutely.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay. Thank you, Standish. Thank you all. Okay, let's go on to resolution number 21-02. This is a resolution of the Board of Directors of Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District honoring Cheryl Stern for years of volunteering and outstanding contributions to the Kirkwood community. Whereas Cheryl Stern has volunteered countless hours for many years planning and operating the Kirkwood Summer Festival Committee and spearheaded, expanded, and modernized the silent auction to benefit the Kirkwood Volunteer Fire Department. And whereas Cheryl Stern participated in and contributed significantly to the affairs of the district and other fundraising efforts for the Kirkwood Volunteer Fire Department. And whereas Cheryl Stern served the Kirkwood community and the district with great determination and dedication, serving on the planning and communications committees. And whereas Cheryl Stern, during her tireless hours of public service to the Kirkwood community and the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District, the fundraising for the Kirkwood Community Playground. And now therefore be it resolved that the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District does hereby express deep appreciation to Cheryl Stern for her many hours of public service to the people of Kirkwood, California. And Cheryl, I just want to say you are one of a kind. You've been an amazing presence in Kirkwood. And I don't really have the words to express the appreciation I have for everything you've done. I'll just say thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric.
Do others have things that they'd like to say to Cheryl?
Well, this is Bob. I'd like to add on to that I can't think of a single time when anybody asked for help that Cheryl wasn't the first one to volunteer. And so it never occurred to me that there'd be a Kirkwood without Cheryl Stern. I just couldn't even imagine it. And Cheryl, we just can't thank you enough for just how much you've done for our community.
Thank you, Bob.
Others?
Yeah. We have Sandy and then Terry.
Okay. Sandy?
Oh, thank you. I want to join the others in thanking Cheryl for all she's done to make our little cluster of houses a true community. Of course, the resolution mentioned all her volunteer work for the Summer Festival and other activities of the PUD and the chili cook-off. But I want to thank her for another contribution to the community that some of you might not even be aware of. And that is in the 90s, Cheryl was editor of our small but delightful newspaper, our Kirkwood newspaper. She solicited articles, edited the articles, browbeat Kirkwood Resort into paying for the newspaper, and made sure it was distributed to all of us. And it really was a glue that helped the community. It's too bad it no longer exists. So thank you for that too, Cheryl. The community will miss you terribly.
Thank you, Sandy.
And we have Terry Woodrow, Supervisor Woodrow.
Yeah, Terry.
See, I'm unmuted. What can I say? I mean, I've worked with Cheryl for many years. She's a true treasure, and she's invaluable to the Kirkwood community, and I consider her a true friend, and you will be truly missed. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Bertrand wanted to say something?
Yeah, I would like to add actually, I mean, how with all the energy and dedication that Cheryl actually demonstrated on so many fronts. So thank you very much, Cheryl. We'll be missed.
And Perot.
And Sandy, did you raise your hand again? It's up.
No, I tried to raise
Oh.
it.
Carolyn.
Carolyn, I wanted
To say something.
This is Carol, and I want to say something.
Carolyn, please go ahead.
I appreciate, Cheryl, all you did, especially for the fundraising. And I mean, I can't say enough about those activities, but I also wanted to point out that when we were building the addition to the rec center, she was volunteering and spent a huge amount of time helping with the management of the construction and getting that all put together and opened up. And that was about 4 or 5 years ago. But she was a big part of getting that finished as well. And so I want to thank her for that effort as well as all of the other things. Thank you, Cheryl. We'll miss you.
Thanks, Carolyn.
I think Rick wanted to say something.
Oh, Rick.
You, on behalf of the volunteer fire department, Cheryl, we can't thank you enough for all the countless hours that you put in to make sure that we get the things that we need, but more importantly, just all the dedication and lost sleep and everything you've done for us. We just, again, I can't express in words how grateful we are. And I hope that you don't mind that I pick up the phone from time to time to give you a call and ask you questions about how we can fundraise better and just support the community. But again, thank you. And I know all the volunteers just truly appreciate everything you've done for us, and we'll truly miss you. So look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, hi, this is Peter. Cheryl, I just hope that once this pandemic is over, we can see you out there hiking for wildflowers again. One of the Laird Blackwell, and some good times ahead still.
Okay, Eric. Eric, you're on mute.
Maybe help if I was unmuted.
Yeah, there we go.
You know, I was saying I've been involved with numerous service organizations and various charities throughout my life. I mean, from the Boy Scouts to Rotary to Native Sons, you know, to the local Amador Community Foundation. And I have only ever in my life seen one other volunteer as tireless as Cheryl, and as giving as Cheryl, and as motivated as Cheryl. And that's saying something. I mean, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of volunteers, and she's the cream of the crop. There aren't any better. And as a token of appreciation, the district would like to see you up at the Kirkwood area. And so to that end, we got you a 2-night stay at the former Sorensen's, now Wilder, Hope Valley cabin there. So hopefully you'll stop by and see us when you do take us up on that, and Jess will find a way to get that to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt resolution 21-02?
Yeah, Dornbrook, I move to adopt that resolution 2102.
I would second.
And Bertrand seconds that. Roll call. Peter?
Rickert,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, congratulations, Cheryl, and thank you. And also please give our best to Bruce, and many thanks to him as well.
Thank you, Eric. I will.
Okay, let's move on now to item 9C. This is the review and hear from applicants to fill vacancy on our district board of directors. I'm going to introduce this with a couple of things. One is just to make sure everybody understands what we're doing and why we're doing and what our alternatives are. So first of all, Standish's resignation took effect on December 17th. And according to state law, we have the ability to fill that vacancy by appointment within 60 days of their resignation. So that's in mid-February. The appointment will require 3 votes. So 3 out of the 4 of us have to agree on an appointment, at minimum 3 of 4. And this appointment is only effective through the November 2021 election. So this is a 10-month appointment.
Actually, should it be until the December? The election is there, but the nominations
No, that's
Should
what
be
I,
until December. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's what I meant, through the November 2021 election, and then the
Okay.
changeover is in December. That is correct.
Yeah.
And then in November 2021, this specific seat will be up for election for a term of 2 years through the November 23 election. In other words, until December of 2023. That's when Standish's term would have expired. So that's what we're aiming for. This is what we're aiming for with an appointment. Now, if for any reason we can't come to an appointment or choose not to, then we can call for an election, which would be in November. And then we would go for the next 10 months, we'd be a 4-person board. If we do nothing, then the County Board of Supervisors has the ability to either fill the vacancy or direct the district to call for an election. So basically, it's an appointment, or the county appoints, or simply an election in 2021. And so just another note, assuming we are able to make an appointment today, Jessica will be swearing the person in early this coming week. So the appointed person I would invite to fully participate in today's meeting as a board member, but won't be able to vote on any matters until he's sworn in. Okay, so are there any questions about this? If not, the process that I'd like to follow here is that I'd like to each individuals, we have actually six strong applications, letters of interest. I'd like each of the 6 to have the opportunity, one by one, to briefly introduce themselves. Obviously, we've read the material. And then the board will have an opportunity to ask any questions they may have. And we'll do that for all 6. And after all 6, we've heard from all 6, I'll open up to the public to make any comments that they might have. And then I'll bring it back to the board for discussion. And I'll describe what I hope that discussion will be once we get there.
Hey, Eric.
Yes.
I think we should have a time limit on each one of us. Otherwise, this could go on for a while.
Okay, who was that speaking? I didn't see.
This is Pat O'Donnell.
Oh, yes. I mean, the discussion, the intros should be brief, relatively brief. I'm not going to put a time limit on it, but several minutes would be fine.
Okay.
But thank you for that suggestion, and thank you for that acknowledgement that this could be a long process. So what I'd like to do is just go in the order that that's in the packet. So that would be Doug, Greg, Howard, John, Patrick, and Preston. So I'm pretty sure I saw Doug as a participant today. So Doug,
yes,
welcome.
I'm here.
Doug,
Welcome. Thank you for welcoming me. I really appreciate the time to be here and for your consideration. I wrote out a lot about me in my letter of intent and in my resume, so I won't go through those in a bit more detail, but just to say, I have a lot of personal experience and interest in electricity markets in particular. And so I have a strong interest in utilities. I wrote my dissertation in electric power industry, worked for electric consulting group for a few years, and know residential rate design fairly well. And I'd just love to bring my passion and experience to the board. More recently, I've been working in analytics, data science, and modeling. And so I come with a very analytical mind to things. I try to think about what the outcomes we want to have, but also in my work, I always work with my customers. And so I try to build empathy and think about what the customer impacts are. And as an economist, I always think about adverse impacts of decisions that we make, or what are some things that we could be thinking about in general to help make changes, and what kind of impact that will have on people's perceptions and understanding from an economics perspective, and how they view the KMPUD. I first skied at Kirkwood in the 90s, and I've just fell in love with this place. And so when my family moved to California, we're just really excited to be a part of the community. And when I thought about how I could spend time to be a part of the Kirkwood community, the KMPUD was the first thing that came to mind. And so I was really excited to see this notice come available. And I just really want to bring my excitement and passion towards electricity in particular is my background, but really all utilities, and learn about some of the ones I'm not as familiar with. But I'll stop there and open up for any questions.
Well, thanks very much. And thank you for your letter of interest and great background. I'm from upstate New York. Appreciate Cornell. Okay, board, any questions for Doug?
This is Bob. I'd like to ask one on the letter. And first of all, Doug, I also like to say I was heavily involved with AB 32 and with the low carbon fuel standard. So I appreciate a fellow policy designer.
That's right.
You mentioned in your letter being ready for growth for our community. I'm wondering if there's any specific things that you feel need to be addressed, or that any further background on that sentence.
Yeah, I mean, I just would say through the buying process, I learned about big developments that could be coming down the pike in the Palisades and then over by Chair 1. And the things that came to mind were system reliability. And I heard it mentioned earlier with the outgoing director who I'd be potentially filling in for, and that was a priority for his perspective. And I imagine when you bring on massive developments like that, it's not just electricity, it's all utilities, and how are we going to service that, and what are the costs associated with that, and how can we plan for the financial impacts and the reliability impacts, because we want to make sure that, even with a big construction and bringing on new members, that we're providing the same level of high quality service to all of our customers, and that from their perspective, there's no real change, and that we make sure that they have a great experience. And so that's really what I was trying to get at is, I'm sure that you all have thought of these things, but that's just one of the things that really came to mind for me as a community grows, and there's still open parcels that need to be developed. That's very clear as well. And I just want to make sure that we're being very thoughtful. And obviously connecting to PG&E directly was a huge change, and that's one way that you've already had foresight in that way. So I just want to be a part of that forward thinking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for Doug?
Yeah, I have a question. Yes, thank you. I'd like to add Doug about if he has any insight or suggestion on how better improve, let's say, to improve our greenness in the valley. I mean, growth is a factor that we need to go through, but we also have to be concerned about our footprint, and clearly the connection to the grid has improved our footprint in the valley. There is no question on that. However, our backup generators are still based on fossil fuel. And so there is a lot of question on how we can do a better job on being a better advocate for the planet.
I think that's a great question and something that I'm very passionate about. And I think, when I think about some of the changes that could be potentially made, I think you've done some areas of like buying renewable energy credits and making sure that you're buying renewable energy. I wonder if the utility district could even produce some of its own renewable energy, solar panels, potentially wind power. I mean, there are things that we could always consider to replace some of the fossil fuels that we have on site to maybe offset some of those things. Some of the other things that came to mind as I was looking through, I know an agenda item for later today even, is the rate design. And how do we think about energy efficiency that comes through rate designs? And when you talk about moving your retail rate from 66 cents down to 22 cents, what is that impact of the price elasticity of demand for consumers? Are they actually going to now consume much, much more in relation to that? And so, I looked at a little bit of the math that I just backed out for some of your assumptions. And, I don't know, how that was made, but like, that's one of the questions that I would want to ask is, and what kind of fuel is that new demand coming from? So rate design from just a straight price change, but also if you think about rate design from the cost of service or the marginal cost of that unit of a kilowatt hour. So time varying prices, that's what I spent a lot of my career doing when I was in electricity, is looking at time varying prices, which typically that is trying to reduce peak demand, which peak demand is usually the dirtier of the fuels, right? Potentially if it's oil or something like that. And so I noticed that the rate design didn't include anything with time variance, and maybe that would be an area that the district could consider as a potential. But those are the types of things that I would want to think about and have conversations about. I don't have necessarily a strong recommendation for my purview at this point, but those are the types of questions that I would think about.
Thank you.
Other board questions? If not, Doug, thanks very much.
Thank you very much
appreciate
for my
your
consideration.
Thoughtfulness.
Can
Greg.
I ask a question?
Oh, no,
Can I ask a question?
Carolyn, after we've gone through all six, so just make a note of the question you'd like to ask Doug.
Okay,
And
thank
at
you.
the end of the six, we'll open to the public. Thanks, Carolyn. Greg, welcome.
Oh, good morning. I've been coming to Kirkwood since the late 90s when I was going to graduate school down in the Bay Area. And I recently started living up here full time. We sold our house in the Bay Area and have committed to living up here at Kirkwood. And consequently, I've taken a higher interest in the infrastructure that we currently have. And I have some experience, as a townhome condo owner trying to improve my property, and it's an older property. And consequently, some of the infrastructure that exists around the connection to Thimblewood is pretty old and maybe not as well understood as some of the newer developments. And so I think that, there's some room for improvement in how homeowners can interact with PUD and to improve their property as well as to improve the existing infrastructure. And that's really where I'm coming from my interests. And my background, if we looked at my resume, is really in circuit design, which chip level circuit design. If you own an iPhone or an iPad or some of the new MacBooks with M1 processors, I've worked on those chips. So I don't think I necessarily have technical expertise that directly relate, but my background is in electrical engineering, and so I'm a reasonably analytical person. So hopefully any learning that is necessary can easily be done. So that's who I am.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks very much, Greg.
Sure.
Board, any questions of Greg? And so, Greg, I just want to verify that your particular interest stems from, well, first of all, are you a permanent resident now in Kirkwood?
Yes.
Or? Okay.
Yes. Because we sold our home in Mountain View, this is our only residence.
Okay.
So,
all in, huh?
Oh yeah.
All in. And so your experience really comes from, or your interest really stems from your experience with the older infrastructure that's around Thimblewood.
Yes. Yeah. That's my direct experience. And I know that there's some apprehension on some of this older direct bury power that is used in Thimblewood, and maybe some of the other existing infrastructure isn't well understood. The idea is, that we know sort of what's there, but not exactly or precisely what's there. And sometimes that results in don't touch it, don't fix what isn't broken, but at the same time, it makes it hard to make improvements around various properties.
And do you think that fear comes from your fellow homeowners or from the district?
I got it both from, one of our homeowners, Brandy, she's now moved out of Thimblewood, had expressed some concerns, and I don't entirely disagree with it, but expressed some concerns about propane. Thimblewood was so old, we don't have propane service. And when I was remodeling our unit, obviously it seemed I'd done some cost analysis, electricity versus propane for water heating and whatnot. And it seemed far more cost effective to use propane with an on-demand water heater than an electric on-demand water heater. And she expressed some concern about the risks associated with that, and I think that was right after some homes had some fire issues and weren't doing so. Technically, I think a lot of her concern, and Brandy could speak for herself, I don't want to speak for her too much. I think what was happening in Kirkwood was a lot of that concern, and consequently, I sort of felt like it was twofold. It was a homeowner, but she also was speaking from experience from her PUD life. And another one was my neighbor who also was doing some home improvement. We both did a basement two summers ago, and the electrical panel and meter were right there on the side of his house, and it was sort of impeding a stairwell that he needed to put in for his basement. And we encountered some issues around how to, he wanted to move the meter, but there was some apprehension about moving the meter because of the direct bury electrical lines that were existing in Thimblewood, and not entirely certain or comfortable with touching them in any way. And consequently, he had to sort of work around that, and he couldn't move the meter or the cabling. So
Okay.
it was twofold.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for that explanation. Appreciate it. Any other questions from the board? No. Well, thank you, Greg.
Sure.
Thanks. for your-
Actually, I was going to say it's not really a question; it's kind of a comment. I think there is validity in saying that KMPUD need to improve its understanding of its grid and distribution system in general. And then as far as propane, we are trying to move away from it because it's not a green source of energy. So, and that's basically a process. So at this stage, actually, the PUD is looking at not offering any more will serve to new project in Kirkwood with propane.
Right. And yeah, that's been more recent development, at least communicated out. This was 2 years ago, actually more than that, but just looking at the cost efficiency, to me, that's where I was looking at why propane seemed like a win in terms of electricity to heat a certain volume of water versus propane to heat a certain volume of water. And it seemed to come out to be about 6x cheaper to heat the same volume of water. So
some great analytic skills there.
Yes.
Okay, Greg.
I'm an engineer. I can throw down spreadsheets. I'm sure Doug, as an economist, can do the same. It's probably more rigorous than me, but sure.
It'd be nice if we could use a chip to clean up our sewage, but we can't. So.
Okay, Greg. Well, thanks so much. Thank you. Howard, welcome. Howard, you're on mute, Howard. Yeah, there you go.
All right. Did you all receive my statement of interest or just my resume?
Oh, we got your letter.
Both. We got both, Howard.
You got both. Oh, because I didn't see the statement of interest in the packet. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for everything you all have done as a board. This is a very tough situation we have with expensive utilities. And I've done everything I could over the years to try to keep the costs down. And I think just the kind of, I'd also like to thank everybody else who replied to your request, because to me, as a long-term homeowner here, it's very heartening to see that we have so many people that would want to replace this open board seat. I think it really bodes well for the community that we have people that are interested and that would want to fill this role, because I know that all the board members work very hard, put in very long hours, and I'm prepared to do that. The letter that I said included what I told two of the original board members, Dick Reuter and Larry Lacey, which was I would trust any 5 random members of the Kirkwood community to do a better job than El Dorado Irrigation District, a bunch of farmers in Placerville. And I think that over the years, this has really been borne out. We've had great community participation. Peter's been there since the beginning. He's seen a lot of things come and go and changes. And so you have my resume there, and I think most of you know what I've done for the community in the past. personally, I feel very strongly about the electric rates, that they be structured to encourage our transition away from propane. I think just in Greg, who just spoke, said when looking at the cost between putting in propane or not putting in propane, electricity just was too prohibitively expensive. So it would make our rate structure more complicated, but maybe for people that are willing to go all electric, maybe we have to have a different rate for them. People that are willing to put in car chargers and heat pumps for heating their hot water. The big picture here is that at Kirkwood, we do have a responsibility to the future. I want to see this place functioning 100 years from now. And climate change is real. We've seen the impact on California. It's affected our insurance rates here at Kirkwood. I lost my insurance because of the fires, and we want to do everything we can to be a model community, model Sierra community, and transition away from fossil fuels as quickly as we can. So anyway, I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Thanks, Howard. Thanks for a very thoughtful letter as well. It is in the packet, by the way. It's after the resume, not before the resume.
Oh, okay.
Questions from the board members? Howard, I think we know you so well.
Yes.
I don't think a lot of questions are necessary.
Yeah. Yes, I feel the same. I've been discussing with Howard a lot of times, and we've been involved for so long with the PUD as well. So thank you for that as well. I take opportunity. But yeah, I don't have a specific question. I think I understand your angle.
Yeah. Okay. Last chance for the board members to ask questions of Howard. Howard, well, thank you again.
Thank you.
John Schroeder.
Hey, good morning. I also wanted to say thanks to Standish for putting in great work over the last 9 years, and also thanks to the standing other four board members and Eric, Christensen, Rick. Certainly PUD is in much better condition today than it was a decade ago. I remember talking to Standish and on January 1st, 2010, when we were watching the Mountain Utilities building burn down, the power generation building, I didn't think that the following decade would be so good for PUD, but it really has been. So congratulations on that. And I also I'm very encouraged to see the number of people that applied for this position and the amount of talent there. That's really good to see the community involvement. I've been up at Kirkwood. I've been skiing there since the 80s. I've had a home up in Kirkwood for the last 12 years. Served on the Homeowners Association board the last 12 years. And then with Peter and Bertrand, I've been on the planning committee just starting January 2020. I like the subject matter. I enjoy the projects. As my career, I put together many operating plans and had to measure the operating plans, negotiate contracts, lead organizations. I've been a board member or chairman of the board for a couple decades on various companies. So I understand the board management relationship and how that should work. I do have some technical background, and I did some civil engineering work early in my career. So I enjoy the topics that we look at as part of the planning committee. We've looked at, heat pumps and green hydrogen and the furthering the propane service or discontinuing the propagation of propane services. And I find that very interesting. I retired a year ago, so I've got the time to really devote to this now. So I'd be very happy to be part of the board and try to make a contribution, both from the standpoint of pushing us toward, a very strong financial situation for PUD, especially with the threat of COVID-19 that could close the resort and reduce the amount of revenue we get from a resort. I think we we need to address things like that. And I know the board already is from talking to Bob a couple weeks ago. But also just, furthering the move toward green. I'd like to see how we could support community development, or at least make it attractive for new developments in Kirkwood. Not that I want the ski resort to get crowded and long lift lines, but I think we want to be friendly to new development. And like I said, I retired a year ago. I've got time to put in on these sort of things, and would appreciate being part of the board. So thanks for the consideration.
Well, thanks, John, and thanks for your interest. Questions from the board for John? Bertrand.
First, I would like to thank John for his participation, good participation in the planning committee. I'd like to ask him, actually, since we basically have kind of mortgaged our future with our massive investment in the Out Valley project, how does he see that we can balance basically our financial commitment with moving the valley toward greener energy?
Yeah, I think it is a tough choice, and as part of the planning committee, we did do a comparison of the cost of propane versus the cost of electricity and other power sources. And I think but the easiest route to it is any new development would be encouraged to use greener energy. Probably or certainly not extending propane service and encouraging the use of technologies like heat pumps. I think from talking to Bob Epstein a few weeks ago, putting a rate structure together that would cover the fixed costs and reduce the exposure of a resort shutdown and the loss of revenue because of the a potential resort shutdown would be really important. And then in that rate structure to also encourage the use of green energy, either to use greener technologies on site in the valley, or to when we purchase energy, to purchase energy with a greener source. So I think it's tough. We have to be practical, and we don't want to become too expensive. I know when I bought my house up there, we were still on the Mountain Utilities powerhouse, and I thought, boy, diesel rates go up. I might be afraid to turn a light on in my house in a few years. So we have to balance that. I think it's tough, but certainly with the fires we had this last summer, the crazy weather patterns we have, we've got to show some leadership moving toward green energy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess my only question, John, is can you give just a very brief comment on, I know you've been part of startups. I mean, do you have experience seeking financing and that kind of thing?
Oh, I've done more rounds of financing than I care to remember. Yeah. You start out your career to be a computer scientist, and in the end, I think I'm more of a financer and kind of an attorney between all the contracts and negotiations and doing financings, both public and private. Yeah, I mean, I can say I've raised hundreds of millions of dollars as part of my startups over the last 20 years.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Okay, John, thanks very much.
All right, thank you all.
And now we go on to Patrick, and do you prefer to be called Pat?
Yeah, Pat's fine.
Pat. Okay, Pat.
Yeah. You can hear me okay?
Yes, you're up.
Okay. So Eric, after listening to the other applicants, I think you need all of us.
I think so. I think you're exactly right.
Hey, thanks again. And I also want to thank Standish and the board for all they've done. When I saw the execution of the power line, the direct line, the transmission line, it gave me and everyone else hope that things can get done at Kirkwood. And it took a lot of grit and perseverance, but it actually got done, which I think was nothing short of amazing. So there's nothing that can stop us. So a little bit of background on me. although we've owned here in Meadowstone, and I see Doug, I didn't realize you were a resident of Meadowstone. In fact, you can help us on our own power situation. It's our biggest cost item on our budget. And now Eric Christensen, he's a homeowner here at Meadowstone. So glad to have you guys as part of our building. You know, I don't have the technical expertise in power, and I don't have a lot of expertise in fundraising and financing, but I do have a formal background in finance, and I have run large organizations where I've had to, you know, use most of my time on financial matters, profit and loss. So I'm very familiar with financial statements and making decisions to move to profitability. I would say that since you don't know me, I think really the makeup of a board is really important. We all have to work together. And I think what you can get from me is I'm a good listener. I observe, and I would put the needs of PUD and the community above my own. I'm more about execution and less about doing deep analysis and you know, studies and just getting nowhere. I'm more about execution. So that's really the kind of leadership you would get from me is primarily getting things done and helping PUD move Kirkwood forward. I think if you look at the homeowners and on the one side and Vale on the other side, PUD is right in the middle. It's the only stabilizing force at Kirkwood. And if anything's going to get done, PUD has to be the leader. And we've got to get everyone working together to that end. So, so the last thing I'll say is I think the board should be comprised to represent the whole community. I think that we should have someone who lives in one part of Kirkwood, another person who lives in another part of Kirkwood, just so that all the interests of the whole community are represented on the board. So that's all I have, Eric.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Pat. Really appreciate that. Are there any questions for Pat from the board members? Bertrand.
Yes, thanks, Patrick. I appreciate your comments. So in that front, the question I have is, do you think KMPUD should be the leader on economic development? Based on what you said, the questions come because we have not been very good this last decade on economic development, and we clearly need to address that. So, but we are.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Bertrand, that's a very good question, and I think PUD should be the tip of the arrow on economic development. I think it's as I said before, we're the stabilizing force, but we also have the Achilles heel of the high rate. I think Doug said it's like 65 or 66 cents. That I think will stunt our growth, and we have to come up with very creative ways to promote growth without saddling everyone with high electric rates. So I think I can't think of anyone else who can actually lead economic development. I think PUD is the only entity here that can actually make that happen.
Are there other questions from other board members? Pat, I have one question. You say you split your time between Kirkwood and Washington, D.C.?
That's correct.
And is that in big blocks of time, or how do you do that?
Well, I go back and forth. Like this summer, I was here for 6 weeks. I plan to spend the entire winter here. I currently am not working. I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to work again.
No, you can't. No, you don't want to.
I know. That's you sound like Maureen, my wife.
Yeah.
So I'm in that decision-making process now. There's a couple of other companies who are asking me to come in and do, I'm only, if I go back to work, it'll be on projects, not taking a full-time executive role that will take, 80 hours a week. So I'm still kind of going through that and whether or not I want to continue to work. And I think we'll keep our home in DC for now. But I think it's mainly my wife Maureen is here like 6 or 7 months. I'm 4 to 5. I can see myself splitting it. So to answer your question, it could be a couple of months at a time I'm in DC, and then I come back here for a while, then I go back and forth.
Okay, so it's not big, half of a year one place and half a year the next. It's mixed up a little bit.
That's correct.
Okay, good, thank you. Any other questions for Pat? If not, we thank you, Pat, and thanks for your interest. We move on to Preston. Hello, Preston.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for giving me a couple of minutes, and just want to repeat, boy, that's a great panel that you've got to choose from here. So I think that's a wonderful thing, but I also think it's indicative of the Valley. The people in the Valley you're going to find are, super talented and come with a very diverse background, and it points out the fact that we really need to tap into the resources that we have. And I think there's a lot of passion as well amongst the people up there. My background, like others on the call, I've worked in startups and tech for many years. I've been in energy space in about 15 years. I've been sort of in the disruptive side of energy on the solar energy and finance side initially when I got in 2007. I've worked in energy efficiency, and then most recently I was a founder of a company that was providing EV charging stations, smart EV charging stations that actually coordinated with the grid and also enabled participation in demand response, stationary storage, other type solutions to. So I think it was Doug spoke earlier about how you incentivize rates for cleaner energy. That's been my passion for the last almost 20 years, and that's also why I'm interested in working with the board here. We've done a house up there since '99. Like I think another person earlier mentioned, my house right now is in contract in the Bay Area. We've moved up full time. I'm also debating whether to go back to work or not. At the moment, I'm meaning not to, but to at this point retire. I've worked in the community also for quite a while. I was a former board member and then president of the Kirkwood Meadows Association, KMA. And I have, kind of followed what's happened in the Valley for quite a while at Kirkwood. Somebody said earlier, the PUD is a stabilizing entity. I think that's exactly right. I've always looked at the PUD as being sort of an objective group who has led and provided the opportunity for a sounding board in the community, where I've seen, various other extremes, if you will, from both the resort, but then also, of course, homeowners. So I think that continuity, that stabilization is actually super important. And big picture, just to kind of round out my thoughts on what's happening. I mentioned that we've moved up here. We've seen that. I saw that. I've been watching some of the board meetings over the last couple of months, and I saw some of the data that showed the number of resident days in the Valley. And I think that's something that needs to be watched and potentially reacted to. If the working from home and the change in work habits sticks that we've seen from COVID, that actually is both opportunity and threat to the PUD. That means more usage, more demand on services. I saw wastewater, for instance, as being kind of above expected levels. But I think that's potentially a trend, and it's something that needs to be tracked and responded to. I also think that if people are going to be incented to live at Kirkwood on a full-time basis, which I actually think should be one of the goals of the PUD, we need to consider what services are offered. Specifically, on one of the previous board meetings, I saw there was a discussion about whether to sell the old ambulance that had been donated, to the PUD, and the discussion about the expense of, having EMTs and ambulance services. Those are important questions because folks such as myself, I'm not getting any younger, and living in the Valley on a full-time basis, that's a factor. And I think it's one of the things that we need to listen to and respond to as a board or as a community more generally. I also think there's been some discussion, I think Doug mentioned, and then also Howard, some of the work around rates, time of use, and sort of rate determination. There's a big trend happening right now. I've actually been on the disruptive end of this, or digitalization of energy. And then, electrify everything. What does that mean? What does that mean for utilities? In my mind, it's both, again, threat and opportunity. We should be, in my opinion, promoting electrification through EVs. We should be promoting electrification through heat pumps, through high performance hot water, electric, induction stoves. And the downside, if you look at it in utility, I worked in solar for a long time, and there's a love-hate relationship, right, between solar providers and utilities. But solar is for real. It's happening, particularly if you're at 67 cents a kilowatt hour. So that rate design makes a big difference, and we need to figure out, how we embrace all of those things to get cleaner, to get off of propane. And I think that's education. I think it might be incentives, to go all electric, and also how we brand that. I'm actually a marketing guy from years ago. I saw John work with some of my classmates from the Stanford Business School, Barry and Chris, for instance. But marketing and, what's the word that you get out to the Valley about who is the PUD? What are we driving forward? So I see the opportunity for folks who are up here. We're here for a reason, right? We're at Kirkwood because we love being outside. We want to see the beauty and enjoy it. And I'll be honest, when I come out skating in the meadow and I go by the PUD and I have that smell of you can smell whatever's going on there. That is not why I'm there. And I think something like that actually causes some concern in the community about what is the PUD doing? Are they actually acting on in the necessary fashion to have the wastewater treatment be done in the way that it could be, needs to be done, particularly with the growth that we're talking about experiencing? So things like that we need to tap into, we need to watch, and it's a small, utility district. I get that, not infinite money, but we actually have people who are there for a reason. I think there's an opportunity to build, a vision for the PUD that kind of accomplishes and answers some of the questions that I see happening in the, in the global trends that we need to address. Good, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Preston. Are there any questions for Preston from the board members? I actually had a question, Preston, but you answered it with your threat opportunity statements. I appreciate that.
What was the question?
Oh, well, it's essentially I was going to actually repeat to you the Bertrand's question to Pat, which was your view on economic development.
Yep. I think, anyway, so if you feel like it's been answered, that's good. I'll let anybody else.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think people come to, there's a huge opportunity to make this a more attractive place to live. And I think that if there's more people here who live here, there's more economic opportunity. So those two things commercial and residential go hand in hand, and the utility can lead in that regard. And I do think we need to have the right rate structures. I did see some of the numbers. I don't know if 25 cents or 22 cents is the right number, to be honest. I haven't seen the numbers. To me, that feels low. To me, it feels like we want to be more kind of in where PG&E is, and preferably also potentially with TOU type policies. But again, these are decisions that the board has to make, and I'm not educated enough at this point to opine. But those things do matter in terms of economic development, connection rates, et cetera. But I think we have the opportunity to make this to be an attractive place for people to live. The more people that live here, the more we're going to see businesses, trying to run as well.
Great, thank you. One last time, any questions from the board? If not, thank you all six for your applications, for your interest, for your articulate presentations of yourselves. This is an impressive group. You're each impressive, so thanks so much. I now would like to open this to any public. I know Carolyn had a question.
Yeah, I had a question for Doug. How long have you been at Kirkwood?
As an owner, just the last few months. Fall of 2020 is when we purchased.
Okay. And also, I'd like to say about Howard, I've worked on the operations committee with him for many, many, many years now. And he's always seemed to be very knowledgeable, thoughtful, responsible, responsive. I don't know any of the other candidates, but Howard, I certainly would recommend him personally from the work on the operations committee. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Carolyn. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else on the Zoom call that would like to make a comment? Eric, is there any hand going up?
None that I see.
Okay. Okay. It's now the board's turn to, Bertrand, go ahead.
Can I make just a general comment?
Sure, of course.
There is only one seat available, but obviously I'm amazed by the quality of the applicant here. And I'd like to mention that there is room in several committees, and it'd be wonderful if some of you actually join some of the committee that we have. And then this is also, next election is in November, and there are going to be 4 seats, including that seat that you are trying to nominate. That's going to be opened up at that time.
Very good points, Bertrand. Thank you. Okay. So for the board discussion, what I was hoping we could do is we could each just talk a little bit about the criteria that we're applying to our thoughts. And then after that, after we've talked about that, or each person has had a say about that, and we don't have to have all the same criteria, of course. I mean, we're independent thinkers, and we don't have to come to a consensus on that. But I'd be interested to know what the other 3 of you are thinking as being important. And after that, then we'll see if we can, if there's someone who pops out as a person who get 3 votes. If not, we'll go through more discussion and more of a process. Bertrand?
May I have a suggestion to be considered for the process?
Sure.
Yeah. So I wonder if at some point we are going to try to decide who is going to be the next the nominated. Could we actually have a multiple nomination round robin or whatever you call that, so we can narrow the field?
Yes, that would be the follow-up process for
Okay.
sure. That's
Yep.
Yeah, it's just so you know, Bob and I have talked about this as president and vice president, because I was trying to figure out how, because with 6 very qualified applicants, I don't know how easy it's going to be to get to 3 votes for one particular person. So we contemplated a variety of things, but most of what we were thinking about requires comfortable use of technology, and I wasn't sure that would work. So we'll just do it all verbally. But essentially, that's right, Bertrand. The idea, I think, would be after we talk about criteria, we can actually maybe say, well, based on the criteria that I think is important, here are the 1, 2, or 3 that I think are the strongest for this point. So I'll just start just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. So here's my thinking. My thinking is that this is a 10-month appointment. After 10 months, it's not in our hands. It's in the hands of the incumbent. It's in the hands of the voters if there are multiple people vying for the seat. So that's not in our hands. So I'm focused on the next 10 months. And in these 10 months, what we've got is substantially more uncertainty than we normally have. I mean, this is a situation where we normally have uncertainty, largely because of weather. But now we've got the pandemic as well, and we don't know what impact that's going to have over the next months. In addition, we have a major financing to come up on the wastewater treatment plant that we've got to get resolved and get rid of those smells that Preston talked about. We've got to upgrade that plant. So we're in a situation of uncertainty, and I think it's largely a financial matter. So what I'm focused on right now for the next 10 months is how are we going to come out of this financially strong? So what I'm looking for, the criteria that I've got is, the main one is somebody who's able to step in like the next finance committee and join Bob and be a productive contributing member of the finance committee. My shorthand is, even though by the way, I've asked Bob to step up and be treasurer in addition to being vice president, which we can discuss later. But so I don't think this person will become treasurer, but I'd like this person to be able to be treasurer right off the bat. And part of that ability, I think, is to understand how the district operates without much of a learning curve. And I think that means someone who has served on a committee. Ideally, that would be the best indication for me. So that's my thinking right now. Someone who's got some strong financial skills, who can help see us through the next 10 months of uncertainty, help us through the budgeting process, which I think may be a very difficult process this year, trying to figure out trade-offs given the realities of our situation. And somebody who can do that with the knowledge of the district going in. So that's my my criteria. So Peter, do you have thoughts on how you're going to make your contributions?
I concur with you in a lot of what you said. I think we should take a pragmatic approach because this is a very short term, 10 to 11 months. And although we have 6 candidates who are very well qualified, 2 of those candidates have been involved with the district over the years, Howard and John. And so they have an advantage in that they don't have to go through the learning curve, because we're looking at a 10, 11-month period. And I think they both, I know that in the 35 years I've been on the board, a lot of the decisions that were really important to the district were made relying on the advice from Howard Hoffman, to be quite honest with you. Some of the biggest decisions we've made. And I see the biggest challenges ahead of us. I know financing, but comes with the water and the wastewater. I think that's where our biggest threat is. We've resolved the electricity to the point where it's just how to pay for it. We don't have the urgency in terms of failures and stuff like we do with water and wastewater. So I think that I would limit the candidates to those 2, and that's just my preference to John and Howard.
Thanks, Peter. Bertrand, what's your thinking, Bertrand?
So the 3 criteria I'm looking are also someone that can step up for financing, since that's where Standish leave a big hole. So that's definitively criteria. Another one is I definitively am concerned of the ecological impact of our financial decisions. And I really want something that is sensitive, someone that is sensitive to that. And the third one is vision. I think we need someone that, I know it's only 10 months, but that person can reapply, present himself for the board in August actually. So I see it as a stepping stone as well. So I think I want someone who has vision on how to make our valley better, because we can still improve. I mean, yes, we've made progress in the last 10 years, but we still have a long way to go to become a greener entity community. So that's the 3 criteria.
Thank you, Bertrand. That's great. Bob, your thoughts?
Well, first off, when we got the shock that Standish was resigning, I was concerned whether we'd have any volunteers to step in. So I never imagined that we'd actually have 6 qualified candidates to show up. So in my mind, the first thing I want to emphasize is the fact that we do have open committees and we have flexibility in that. So for anyone who's the 6 who's interested in this, for the longer term, being interested in a committee, we'd certainly welcome that, because obviously we can only pick one person today if we get it down to 1. The other thing is I'm really reluctant to, I think I'm the only board member who was ever appointed in the history of the district. Everyone else.
That's not correct.
That's not correct? Oh, okay. Who else? When was
I believe it was Norm Rupp, and when Greg McManus resigned to move to Hawaii, it took us like 4 or 5 months to find a replacement for him, if memory serves me right.
Oh, well, good. So, all right. So I'm only the most recent appointee. I think the community is served by actually having competitive elections. So the fact that the majority of the board will be up for election this November, including, if I remember correctly, myself and Eric. I encourage, regardless of what happens today, that people consider running for the board seat, because it's really, there's a question about trying to have diversity of location. I mean, to date, the board, all right, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, has only had older white males serving. So I would say our diversity.
Well, we have some females on our committees, and
that's
especially
true.
the Old Gals Committee.
That's true, but in terms of elections, and
yes,
I know that Bertrand's daughter ran a couple years ago, and that was
well,
great.
Betty Berry was one of the original board members.
There we go. Okay, so anyway, I just want to encourage people to consider that the actual election, and that we do have the task right now of trying to narrow this down for a position. But I want to encourage people to think about the election in the fall. In terms of what I'm looking for, I think the emphasis is on familiarity, board experience, and a generalist. We don't really, we have staff to cover a lot of the expertise. We have consultants available. So the board has a lot of different things it needs to do. So a generalist with board experience, and obviously Standish is really good at, particularly, when we work on the budget and the rest of that, someone who can spot issues and is familiar with things like Standish has been so good at doing. I think that's an important, we're losing that, and it would be nice to replace it as part of this appointment. But I just want to say to all 6 of you, I wish I didn't I wish I wasn't in this position, because I think everyone who's talked today could be a real contributor.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Okay, so Peter has begun the process of saying who he, for these 10 months, thinks would be the best. So for this appointment, so Peter, Howard and John are your first 2 choices at this point?
That's correct.
Okay. Bertrand, do you?
Can I ask actually to have 3 choices? Because
sure. Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Because the number would be too shy otherwise. So I think it'd be better to have 3 choices.
Sure. I mean, Peter, if you've got a 3rd choice, that would be fine too. But if not, you're not required to.
Okay.
Bertrand, go ahead.
Okay, so based on the description I had earlier, as do we give order, or do we just give choices?
Your choice.
Choices.
Order, I think, is probably good.
So I didn't understand what was order from Peter.
Oh, Peter, do you have a preference, one or the other?
Well, yes, I would say Howard first and John second.
Okay. Bertrand.
Based on experience.
Yeah. So based on the match for the specific 10 months, and it's very difficult. So I wish, but I'm just going to go one way. Let me think here. It's order that is difficult.
Okay, you don't have to put it in order.
So let's remove order. So I would nominate, basically, that's what I'm doing here. I would nominate Howard, Preston, and Doug.
Okay, and that's not necessarily in that order. It's just those 3.
Yes, that's order. That's not order. This is
order.
yeah.
Okay. Bob, what's your thought?
Well, being forced to narrow down to 3 without putting order on it, John, Howard, and Doug.
Okay, and for me, it's the criteria I had is John, well, you guys make it hard, and because of the my focus on finance. I think Pat and Preston both bring a lot, and I can't. It's hard for me to make a choice between Pat and Preston on that. But John not only brings some financial background, but also his familiarity with the district. So I think I would do John, Howard, and then I would split it between Patrick and Preston.
So that's 4.
That's 4. Yeah, actually, and I'd also like Doug, and I like Greg too. So how about 6? My preference is 6. Okay, so what we have here are Howard shows up on everybody's list.
Yeah.
John shows up on 3. So well, I guess let me just ask. Might there be 3 votes for John? I guess that's a Bertrand question and a Peter question.
Yes.
So that again?
I was asking, are there 3 votes for John? I'm going to also ask, could there be 3 votes for Howard? I mean, basically, it's John and Howard are the 2.
Okay.
Choose from, I believe, just looking at the list.
Okay.
So can we get 3 votes for John? That's a question for Peter and Bertrand.
I don't understand the question.
What I was saying, Bertrand, is that John is the first for both Bob and me. So that's 2. Can we get to 3 for John is what I'm asking. That's because John is not the first one for.
Yeah, so
for you.
So my first.
John's not on your list at all.
If we put order now, I mean, I didn't understood Bob had expressed any order, and neither Peter. So I'm confused why you are talking about order.
Okay. Well, Peter had said Howard #1, John #2. Bob, I thought you were doing it in order. Is that true or no?
No, I thought we were unordered.
I'm sorry, my misunderstanding. Okay, let me just ask then. Let's go back and put things in order now. Okay.
Okay.
So Peter has already said Howard #1, John #2. Bertrand.
Yeah, so I would say Howard #1, Preston #2, Doug #3.
Okay, Bob, your thought.
John #1, Howard #2, and Doug #3.
And I'm just the reverse of Peter. I've got John #1, Howard #2. So
So it's a tie?
Yes.
It's 2-2. I mean, for the top preference, it's a tie.
Yeah,
So that's why I was going to go back and say what I said. We have John.
Well,
we have Howard.
Historically, when there's a tie, this is going to sound pretty old-fashioned to you. We draw a name out of the hat, and we've done it before, and that's what the county does. I'm not saying that. I'm not advising you to do that. I'm just saying historically, that's what we've done. If there is a tie.
Right.
Okay. I know we haven't voted yet. I'm just throwing that out at you.
Well, I would say another thing. I would go who has served the longest time for the PUD in various capacities and in committees and stuff like that. So that'd be another way to look at it.
Well, so this is why I want to see, before we decide what to do next, I'd like to see if either Howard or John can have 3 votes or more. So Peter, if John were nominated, could you vote for him?
Well, yes,
That's
I've expressed that I
Yeah.
feel either one of the two candidates would be excellent for our short-term needs, which is what this is. It's, basically 10 months.
Okay. Bob, if Howard were nominated, could you vote for him?
Absolutely.
Bertrand, if John were nominated, could you vote for him?
In which context? If I have the choice between John and Howard, I like both, but as I say, I respect all the contribution that Howard has done over the year, and I think I would prefer Howard to be the nominee. So, but I'd be happy with John as well. I would vote for him if I had to. I have no problem with John. Actually, he's a great contributor, and but I think Howard is my choice. Yeah.
Okay.
So we could reverse now. Would you vote for John, for Howard? And I respond yes. All of us is going to respond yes because we said he's in our list. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what I'm trying to do is I mean, it sounds to me like it really is a tie. I mean, basically, John and Howard are both,
I think so,
near the top of our lists, or at the top of our list for all of us. So, Eric, you're on mute. Are you available?
I am.
Okay, yeah, because I don't see you on video right now. You're just
Oh, I was drinking water and I didn't think people wanted to see that.
Oh, okay, that's okay. Well, that's
I'm staying out of this one because
yeah,
it's not.
I assume you're drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No problem with that end.
Okay. Well, though I have because of my finance concern, I've got a preference for John. I also admire Howard. So, Peter, if it's precedence to just pick a name out of a hat at this point, unless somebody wants to make a motion, and then we can go around and vote. Does anybody have a motion to nominate one particular person?
Yeah, I move to nominate Howard Hoffman to fill out Standish Grady's term, which is probably going to, in reality, be about 10 months.
I would second that.
Okay, Peter, roll call.
Rickert?
No.
Epstein?
No.
Perot?
Yes.
Dornberg, yes. So it's a tie.
Okay. Okay, just to make this formal, I'd like to nominate John Schroeder to be Standish's replacement. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call.
Rickert?
Aye.
Epstein?
Aye.
Perot?
I don't like the way this is done, so I say no. Not because of John, but because this is not proper. Yeah.
And I just want to see somebody pick a name out of a hat, so I'm going to say no.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm trying to do is I want to establish that it actually is a tie. And the only way to do that was to vote.
Yep.
And
No,
so,
that's proper. I agree with that. I think that's the right choice.
So, Eric, would you?
Do you want me to write?
I assume we could do a
write them
coin
down on
toss.
paper and then do a draw. Have Rick draw it out of a hat while I hold it. We're the only ones.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that would be a good.
That's technically that's the most legal way to do it.
Okay.
I know it sounds
So-
kind of
so-
corny, but
Let me
it
get
really
Rick.
is.
I got to put my mask on because we'll be in proximity to each other.
Voilà.
You want to take a break?
No,
Everybody
I
take a break.
No, let's do this and
I'll
then
do
take a break.
staff.
Okay.
Give me a sec. I'm gonna mute myself and I'm gonna go get Rick from the next office and bring him in. Let me get my mask on.
Is this the musical interlude?
Oh.
This is Carolyn. Can I just make a comment
Um,
or not?
Probably not.
Probably, I don't think at this point, Carolyn, we're right in the middle of voting, so I don't think that's going to work. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
You can't see Rick because my background. Oh, now you can see him. Just don't move, Rick. There he is. Okay.
We're gonna do this in a coffee cup?
Yeah, I have a coffee cup, not a hat. Sorry.
Straws work too.
I'm gonna turn the other way. That's the choice.
Choice is, let's see. Can't even, no, that doesn't work. It's John.
All right.
There you go. Can you read it?
Yes, we can read it. Okay, John, congratulations. Howard.
I think we first really need to thank all 6 people.
Definitely.
I mean, this is, it is so encouraging that there's interest, and I really want to encourage you to get involved through committees and consider running in the fall.
Yeah, I would like to add that actually, for example, if Patrick wanted to join the planning committee, it would be a great addition. Maybe Preston could join the finance committee, since we have also an opening there. I really advise
and
that
communications
and communication as well. So please do join the committees, and indeed there are 4 seats up for re-election in November.
Yeah.
And
How
the
does
other
one
thing I
do
want to
that?
emphasize, the other thing I want to emphasize is we did change a couple years ago. We changed the way voting works, so you don't run against a person. It's the top 4 vote getters.
No, actually, for the 2-year seat, you have to. So anybody who wants to
you
run
have
for
to
the
name
2-year,
that one.
you sign up for that one specifically. The other 3 are just as you said.
Right. So so it's not as contentious as picking somebody to try to unseat. So
You
I
only
would
have to
encourage
do it for
people.
2 years. So if you want to get out early, you have a good excuse to run for the short one.
Right. I think you made a good choice. I'm interested in knowing, how do you join a committee?
All you do is express interest. Just send a quick note to Eric Christensen.
Okay.
So the committees that have openings right now are planning has has 2 openings now. Planning has 2 openings. Finance has 1 opening, assuming that Standish joins Finance Committee. We still have 1 opening because Nancy has just resigned.
Yeah.
And we have actually as many as 3 openings on communications and IT. So for those who don't know, communications also handles IT matters.
I would be interested to join the planning committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Myself as well. I'll send a note to Eric.
Yeah, if you send just a quick email to Eric. And,
email or call me, grab me when you see me walking around the valley. Just, yeah, I'll get it to Eric.
I'll go downstairs and knock on your door.
Yeah, I'm all the way at the bottom though. You're all the way at the top.
And having accomplished that, I want to congratulate John on winning on on both the support and the hat toss.
I appreciate it. And Howard, I don't think you and I have ever met, so I'd love to meet you sometime and pick your brain a bit.
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you. Let's take it's now not about 9:45. Let's take a 10-minute break till 9.
Sounds good.
Till 9:55.
Okay.
Thanks all.
Thanks everyone.
And thank you again, all applicants.
Okay, Bertrand, thank you.
Base rates. So you can see that base rate line is at $48,000 under plan. So if we consider that operating revenues for wastewater would be better than plan. And even considering that the total operating for water is up from plan by $97,000. Moving on to electric on page 61. Operating revenues for the month of November were down from plan by $62,000. Year to date, they are down from plan by almost $75,000. Total operating for electric is up from plan though by $43,000. Moving on to propane on page 64 of your packet. Operating revenues for the month of November were down from plan by $16,000. And if you go one line below that, you can see cost of goods sold. We were also down from plan by $16,000. That kind of negates itself out. So year-to-date total operating for propane is up from plan by $42,000. That's all I have on income statements. Unless there are any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I'm just curious on the solid waste. Is there any improvement in terms of improper use?
No.
Eric, do you want to take that one?
Thanks to Director Dornbrook suggestion, we did reactivate, and we've purchased some new and have installed some new cameras, and we've been able to catch people poaching the dumpster, disposing illegally. And we did have, correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, but we did have the one contractor that dumped his waste in there. He actually paid the fine on behalf of the property owner. So we actually received our first fine income, to the best of my knowledge, ever in the history of the district for.
All right, a new growth industry for us.
And it's unallocated revenue, Eric, so we can use it for anything we want.
I love it.
I'd like to make a comment. So what I'm saying about these last few months, we are consistently having non-negligible variance on our budget, often with a higher revenue for propane, water, and else. And most likely this is due to the COVID situation. However, it does bring into question that we actually need to have a second look on how we are going to make this budget for next year. I really want to emphasize that things have changed in the valley, and we need to react to that if we want to have a better match between our budget and our actual revenues.
That's a good point, Bertrand. I've actually been thinking about that quite a bit too, and I know it'll go before finance, but we basically have two options. One, we believe that this is going to carry on, and we continue to keep it in our rolling 5-year average that we use, because it would therefore be accounted for, it'd be in the 5-year average, or we think it's an anomaly and we should exclude it from our 5-year average. And that's definitely a discussion that needs to be had at finance and ultimately the board, but I agree.
So my quick assumption here is we are not going to go back to whatever we were before. I don't know if this is a stable situation, but the fact is many new people have purchased here. Many people have stated they are full-time resident, much more than we had in the past. So I think we need to take that into consideration, because a 5-year plan from the past is not going to match a future, in my opinion.
Okay.
Moving on to the income statement comparison from November 19 to November 20. Obviously, what Bertrand just said, you can see it very clearly here as compared to last year, that this is definitely, a new way of looking at things, and so it will definitely, be a big consideration when we get to budgeting, which is just in a couple of months. So I think that point is made very clear by this comparison. Any questions on comparisons? Okay, we'll move on to
I think the only thing I would add, just for the edification of the rest of the board, not since they weren't on finance meeting, is we've been planning for a 5% reduction, and we're well below that. So we're holding in there right now, well within our contingency plan.
When you say well below that, you mean that in a good sense, not a bad sense?
I mean, in a good sense, a
yes.
positive sense, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
We're less than 5% that we planned for in terms of overall losses.
That was through November, right? I mean,
Right.
So we don't
Well,
know yet. We're 6 weeks
yeah,
beyond November now.
through yesterday, we're better.
Oh, really?
I sent you an analysis looking and Bertrand. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So, yeah. I don't want to jinx it, but if things stay the way they are, then we'll be in really good shape.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on then to December preliminaries, the operating revenues are actuals. So you can see for the month of December, we were better than planned by $24,000. Year to date, obviously, we are still under plan by $149,000. Total operating, obviously this, you know, with the assumptions of the expenses, we're looking to be better than planned by $232,000. Any questions on December preliminaries?
The only thing I would just mention that we discussed in finance is the reason why commercial is in good shape this month is because of a lot of snowmaking that occurred. And some of it has carried into January. But generally speaking, the lifts have less people on them. And so they're running 5 to 10% less electricity usage. Or at least they have in recent times. But we're within the, like Eric said, we're within the 5% margin.
Do we know
So
if the resort has
that's
closed
good.
down snowmaking at this point, or?
They've been running the fan guns. I can see it out my window and the snow that's on my car when it's not snowing. So they've definitely been running the fan guns. Obviously the compressors aren't here anymore, but it's a little something is better than nothing.
Yeah, Matt just sent a thumbs up, so looks good.
Okay, we'll move on then to cash flow. Through December 31st, total operating cash was at 1.78 million, which is $431,000 better than what we had planned. And again, a lot of that has to do with the timing of capital expenses. Obviously, you can see I straight lined what our capital expenses were going to be through the year because it's hard to predict when certain projects are going to happen. But that's one of the reasons why it's so far better than planned. Looking forward, it still seems that if things go the way we hope they will, we'll still end up better than planned by about $200,000 or $300,000. Oh, and also I'd like to mention, you can see for property tax revenue in January, I had about $346,000 coming in. We just got word from Alpine County that they will be issuing our first apportionment, and it's just over $500,000. So usually what we get from Alpine County in January is around $350,000. So I was glad to see that we're getting a larger apportionment than what we had planned.
Is that because the total for the year will be higher or just that they've moved up the payment?
You know, I don't know that answer. I don't know if Eric has a feeling on that or not. I think it's just getting the apportionments to us. They've been working, I think, at Alpine County on new accounting systems and things like that. So maybe they've finally got to a spot where they're able to get stuff together more quickly.
Over the last 2 years, they switched to a new accounting system, and it seems that it's now in place and running better than it did the last 2 years when we had those hiccups. And that was part of our discussion with our acting CFO that was going to be how it was going to be coming in the future. So it looks like they've realized the benefit of that new program, and us as well, therefore.
And the fact that they actually let us know that they were sending the apportionment. We've never gotten a heads up that it was coming before. So I appreciated that.
Okay.
Any other questions on cash flow? Okay. Moving on to known budget variances, there has been some updates to the totals for solid waste, dumping fees and salaries and wages, snow removal salaries and wages had an update. The ammonia spill cleanup had an update to it. We got another invoice for the removal of the waste or the cleanup drums that were there, and that was a $8,000 invoice. And then also we received a late penalty from the IRS for Q3 when we were doing our 941. We realized that when we were paying the taxes, I hadn't included some of the final checks for people that get cut in between a pay period. We were only including the taxes that happened for that one pay period and not including those checks that had come through in the middle of the pay period. So we paid all of our taxes, but these are late penalties for not paying them on time.
Okay.
I have a question. I thought at the last communication meeting, Bob, you had raised the issue that the deficit on the snow removal department would show up in that budget variance list, no?
Well, we talked about it, but Kelly hasn't had a chance to do that yet.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
the
just
next,
haven't got the number yet.
that's okay. So next time, yeah.
It'll appear, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you're making a change, these are all negative, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
If we ever had a positive case where there's more revenue than budget, you would wish these were all negative numbers.
Yeah, these are all negative budget variances. We don't report the positive ones. Maybe we should.
It would make us too happy. So
yeah. Okay.
Okay, Kelly, thank you.
You're welcome.
We move on to item E, performance reporting on aquifer levels. Brandy.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Taking a look at electric for the month of December, we produced 1.2 million kilowatt hours. Most of those were from the grid, just a few from testing from the powerhouse. And if you take a look down, unidentified system losses for the month were at 10%. That brings us to 12% running total for the year. For propane, we had a big December as far as usage. 2.9 million cubic feet were used. We had a 0% unmetered total, right about negative 7,000, bringing us to a negative 1% for the year. And then if we take a look over at water, 1.5 million gallons were produced from our wells with unidentified system losses of 177,000 gallons or 12%. So that brings our total for water to 15% for the year. And all electric, propane and water are all running about at our goal for the year so far through December.
Brandy,
I'm sorry.
Isn't it somewhat unusual that November and December production would be about the same?
That's a good question, Eric. They are, sorry, let me scroll down to the right page here.
I can't remember when the snowmaking at Timber Creek, would that be the snowmaking at Timber Creek that would have upped the November number?
Yes, we did have snowmaking through 12/3 of 20 on.
Okay, that explains it then, I think. Okay, thanks.
Alrighty, and then lastly, wastewater for the month of December, we had 1.6 million gallons treated at our plant. We had a higher than last month unidentified usage there of 30%. That is being looked into by our water wastewater department. So we're going to keep looking at that one. I don't have an answer on why that jumped up a bit, but we're running at about 20% unidentified usage for the year. So that is generally lower than our previous years. However, our I&I that we experienced in July was significantly less. So last word on that is our aquifer levels. The month of December average was 125 feet at the well 4-5 aquifer. This is up a little bit from our end of month of November. It's still lower than we like to see, but this is our low time of year. So we are keeping an eye on that and tracking to watch that come back up. And that's all I have, unless there are.
Normally, isn't well 2 more like at 24 or something at this point?
You know, Eric, I have not looked at what well 2 was. I was just looking at 4 or 5, but I can certainly.
Yeah, for next time, I'm concerned about our water, to be honest.
Yeah, Eric, they increased the use of well 2 due to the air entrainment issue at 4-5. So well 2 came online more than we would have used it normally. So it's entirely possible it's a bit lower than you would normally see, but that had to do with the air entrainment issue, which has since been solved.
Right.
It's shorter run times.
Yeah. Okay. Bertrand, you had a
Yes. Maybe Brandy, can you, I know you've done it in the past, but actually there's a lot of new people in attendance today. Can you summarize how we actually generate a number for the total production for water and wastewater? It's pretty clear how we do for the metering, but not so people understand why we have such disparity.
This is in the performance report, I think.
Yes, so it's 2 pages before. Voilà, yeah.
For water, our production numbers are just the gallons of water produced from each of our wells totaled up for the month of December. And for production or influent meter on the wastewater side, that is a meter, a physical meter that's located at the inlet of our wastewater treatment plant that measures how many gallons of wastewater come into the plant. And those are compared against the water meter numbers for both of those departments.
Thank you.
But Brandy, in addition, water that we pump into a storage area is shown in production, but not metered until it actually drains out. So if
That
we
is
increase
true.
we do not account for the variation in levels of the stored water, above ground stored water. Correct.
Okay. That is correct. And we do sometimes see slight variations month to month because our tank levels could be higher at the end of one month and then be drawn down. So we do see that come into play occasionally.
Yes, but over time, this should catch up. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Brandy. So now we can go on to item 9F, which is energy storage targets. You're on again, Brandy, I guess.
For this one, Eric, we would like to defer this until next month. We've been informed that there is a regulation that is in effect that we need to assess our energy storage storage target requirements. But we are awaiting a staff report and some additional information from our district council. So if we could, we would like to defer this until February.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what that refers to.
It's new to us too.
Bob, do you know what this is about?
Well, yeah, there's a bill, a Skinner bill passed several years ago that requires the IOUs to invest in energy storage. And it was a way to get the market started. And in fact, the IOUs have purchased way more than the original demand, but it's to try to shift from the grid perspective, to shift away from backup natural gas generators, which are constantly running in case there's a shortage, to being able to use battery storage instead. And the fact that this is drifting now into the public utilities is what's happening. But from our perspective, we should look at two things. One is whatever the requirements are, but the second is to the degree with which it's subsidized currently, it's a great arbitrage because our usage is totally uncorrelated with where everybody else's is. So we have the ability to draw stuff in, store it, and then use it at a later point. Long term, it could be used to avoid having to upgrade the transmission line. Short term, if we have a short outage, we could use storage instead of the generators. So to the degree with which that storage has some attractiveness in terms of purchase, we can look at it in a lot of different ways.
Are you saying
That's
that?
what I would encourage you.
Are you saying that because we are the reverse of many users as a community, are you saying that stored power sometimes is put on the market fairly cheaply?
No, it's the opposite. Sometimes you store your energy when it's cheap, and you put it back out either when it's not available or when there's high demand. If we actually had the ability to sell power back out, we could make some good money. But in the short term, it could be used to improve our reliability, to avoid the use of diesel.
Right.
For, you know, when we have an outage for 2 days during the summer, it isn't much power. And
right.
So we could possibly do that just through battery storage. And, you know, we can, and obviously during the winter, nobody uses electricity at 9 o'clock in the morning on a January, except unless you're a ski resort.
Well, that was my point is I know we're not allowed to ship power back down the grid.
Right. So so we can't sell, but we could avoid diesel, and the degree with which, because we're on the day ahead market, there may be times when the storage could be more advantageous if it were cheap enough to buy.
Okay, so we'll defer this till February.
Yeah, Brandy, I mean, is that consistent with your understanding?
Yes, it is. And our, as I understand it, our goal here will be to just have the board take a look at what our target should be and memorialize that.
Yeah, in the process, it might be interesting to just get some pricing.
And that is part of the process also, Bob. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, as far as general planning is, there to be one step we could use to reduce our reliance on fossil fuel. So I think it definitively should be looked at that angle as well to reduce the valley footprint.
Okay, good. Okay, we'll move on to item 9G, General Manager Goals and Objectives Mid-Year Review. Eric, do you want to lead this one?
Sure. So all of the committees, with the exception of operations, has had the opportunity to go back over their goals and reprioritize them, and or delete and or add, subject to full board approval. So that's what we have here.
Okay, I wanted to be sure. Let's see. Just a second, please. There are a couple of things I wanted to be sure were on this list that I didn't see on the list. I know they're being worked on, but in planning, no, in operations, it's, I know operations hasn't met yet about this, but Peter, I want to be sure that we include, you know, this was partly a revision of goals too, recognizing that things changed over the year. So what I want to do is be sure that we include the meter protection as a goal to get it resolved. That ordinance in place. I had something for planning, but now I can't remember what it is, and because of a little glitch in my computer this morning, I don't have it up right now. But there was something, Bertrand, that you guys are working on in planning, and I can't remember. Well, oh, maybe it was the propane in new subdivisions. I think that's what it was.
I think so.
A recommendation on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there anything else that needs to be discussed on this?
Well, in general, I don't have the full list in front of me, but I'd like to, and I think something we could discuss at the planning committee, but I think we need to step up our effort on improving greenness, and I don't see that much reflected in the general manager objective. So I'd like to come up with some direction in that area.
Yeah, and that I think, I mean, given all the conversation that we've had today with our people, the applicants and so on, you know, for next year's goals that we'll be setting in June, I think that's be quite important to do more specifically than we have. Okay. Okay, and Eric, you're happy with the goals as they're now set out? Happy may not be the right word, but I just
pivoting halfway through on what I'm supposed to be doing is,
well, you're in
fun, but I got
you're in
it.
the process of pivot anyway, so there you go.
Yeah, no, I actually I concur, and if Bertrand's okay with it, I would add analyze future provision of propane to the planning ones that we discussed, if he and Peter are okay with that addition.
Yes, please.
That is talk.
Sounds good.
Okay, good. Okay, any more discussion on that? Anything from the public that anybody would like to mention?
One more comment I want to do in that specific topic, actually, and it was discussed with the prospective board member, is the importance of the rate, electrical rate and else, to actually make progress on that front. Yes. So
actually, that was, thank you, Bertrand. That was another one that I had written down. I guess that's for finance. That was for finance.
Yes.
Right. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
That was my third one.
Yeah.
It's on there. It's item 6.
Was it on there? No. Sorry.
Yeah, but it said complete. It didn't say integrate the impact on the environment. Yeah. And our goal toward less propane, more. It's not detailed. Yes.
But this is for the study itself.
Yeah.
Which is underway.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. Thanks. Let's move on to item H, snow removal driveways. Bob, your name's against this item.
Yes, so this is an update for the community and for the board in general, just previewing what we'll be doing in more detail in February. So generally where snow removal was as we produced contracts for this current year is we have a pretty solid way of allocating across HOAs that works reliably and fairly, but we don't really for the driveways. In particular, the issue was the travel time between driveways, how to account for that properly to the driveways and not have it occur to the HOAs. In addition, the board directionally wants to no longer do private driveways, and instead, because they're so interrelated to the HOA, we couldn't do the driveways unless the streets were plowed. The streets aren't plowed unless the HOAs agree. So the interaction between the driveways and the HOAs are such that as a board, our direction is to have a contract with the HOA that then decides how to manage the driveways within it. So those are the two big things. In terms of progress, I would ask Eric to comment on the Palace AIDS meeting, but generally, when I'm done talking, but generally that was positive in terms of the direction of integrating the two. Nothing's happened yet with Juniper Ridge. There are activities happening with KMA. So regardless of whether we're still in the driveway business for this next year or the HOAs pick it up, we needed to have a better way of accounting for it. So, and that's what I really want to report here. So the strategy we've come up with is to literally measure the time we spend servicing driveways when we're not in the driveways. And that's primarily traveling between the driveways or when the driveway snow gets pushed onto the road and then has to be moved a second time. So we put cameras. We have a camera that we put on the trackless with a timer on it. And then we drive through that and then manually this really terrific movie that we'll probably put on YouTube and maybe distribute on Netflix. We have this, and so we know exactly how much time we spend not servicing the driveways. We can compare that to the GPS time. Unfortunately, there hasn't been enough snow to get enough data, but hopefully this week we'll get enough snow to complete this. And then that gives us actual numbers to use to say, this is how much time really should be allocated to the driveways and not to the HOAs. So given that data, we've developed a methodology which is described here, where we take the 3 driveway areas, the driveways in Juniper Ridge, the driveways in Palisades, and then the driveways in KMA. And we treat that all as one bucket, and we put into that the time spent servicing the driveways, plus the time spent that approximately that was traveling between the driveways. That becomes a bucket. So we now have the 22 HOAs, the 3 driveway buckets. Time is allocated across them. And then we take the total amount of money that we need to collect and then divide that across. So at the February board meeting, we'll present the actual data for doing that and show what it would have looked like if we had done this last year compared to what we actually did. And that will provide insight for the board to consider a change in the methodology. And the goal would be to discuss that at the February meeting, take back any changes and be able to come back in March and have this actually be the part of the budget process that can get approved, along with the total budget by the beginning of July board meeting. So that's one part of this presentation. Let me stop at that point and see if Eric wants to comment on the HOA interactions.
Yeah, the only thing I have to add is that we've met with Palisades representatives and Frank Dixon, and they have indicated they will be implementing this. We've drafted the contract language, and it looks good to both of us. Obviously, their HOA still needs to approve it, but it looks very positive.
Eric, when you say this, you mean with driveways will be integrated into the HOA contract?
We would just have a contract with Palisades HOA for the entirety of that landmark, which includes all driveways.
I just want to clarify one thing, because I know what Bob was talking about, but others may not. When Bob said the district may not want to be in the business, it doesn't mean that we don't want to remove snow from driveways. It just means we don't want to manage individual contracts on the driveways.
Thank you for that clarification. That's what I meant to say, and I didn't say it.
So that's the issue. So, right. And my understanding is that while KMA wrote a letter and requested a year to work through any complications that they might have, and like you said, nothing from Juniper Ridge. That's sort of the status of things, right?
That's right. In the case of KMA, it's more complicated because they have a mixture of houses with driveways and houses without.
Right.
Whereas Palisades and Juniper Ridge, if you have a house, you have a driveway.
Yeah.
And Bertrand, I don't know if you want to add anything in terms of.
What I would like to say, it's also that going to require change in the CCNRs. And this is not something easy to do. It's not impossible, but it's going to take time. Last year, KMA tried to change its bylaw, but not reach a quorum. So we have to start again this year, and we'd probably add, I don't know for the fact, we'd have to ask for a KMA board, but they'd probably try to add CCNR change at that time as well. So it sounds to me it's unlikely that it's going to happen fast enough for moving this year. The other thing I heard from KMA board is they really like to have an accurate accounting before they can move, so they can actually charge people normally. We cannot, one of the key things legally is KMA can only charge what it costs to do a specific service. That means we cannot make a profit on anything. So we really need to have a fair way to assess that. And one thing that has not been discussed, I mean, I think the summary of Bob was great, with a caveat that Eric pointed that the PUD was not going to stop servicing driveways, just going to stop providing individual contract for driveway plowing. That's basically the goal, different thing. But the other thing that was not added is, okay, in an ideal world, we would have the transit time and the driveway time and both being accurate. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Sometimes some driveway are missed for various reasons. And sometimes GPS doesn't track some specific driveways that are too small or depending on weather situation. So there is a bucket of, and that's why we are using now an average. So we are kind of an algorithm that's going to compute the time spent for driveways or through the season without being subject to these misses. So, but what we need to do, the way to correct that, because and to charge that, they are going to become part of the transit time. So the transit time will be both the transit time and the missed driveway, because currently the missed driveway are charged to the HOA. So that's what we try to change as well.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. So that's one aspect of what we're doing. The second aspect is to come up with a way to, after every shift, to have a sense of whether things happened as planned or whether there's exceptions. We want to significantly reduce the labor cost of curating the data. And so if you can move on to the next page in terms of the improvements in curation, Eric, for me. Do you have the chart? Did you say? No, no, that isn't what I was looking for. I also produced in this to show a sample from after a shift, the shift reporting, the shift exception reporting was in this memo originally.
I don't think I've seen it in the packet.
No, it accidentally got deleted from this memo, but so anyway, what we've created is after every, actually during, it's a live report, and after every operator shift, those items there in bold are reported, and and they're all hot links, so you can click and go into details behind it. So for example, we would normally expect after a shift in a typical snowfall to have serviced all the resident driveways and probably most of the driveway contracts, although sometimes that'll flow into the second shift. This then reports on that. We would expect to cover every HOA. So this is a very quick way to say that things work as planned. And if they didn't, to quickly drill down and see what's going on. So those reports are now available for the for management and for the operators to look at and follow through. So this, it also, we've created ways for any exceptions. For example, if a driveway wasn't plowed because of an obstacle, those can be recorded now. So we have a way of much less time of having an accurate accounting. So this is kind of the equivalent of performance reporting, but for snow removal. And that's the goal. We're in pretty good shape on this. We'd be in better shape if there's only more snow, so we had more data to compare. But we're IT is iterating with staff to try to make these work as well as we can. The last thing I want to mention is we did put in some new online services, which we introduced for the people who have driveways, that you can get a daily report of what the snow level is expected to be and what the snow removal plans are for that day. And so we sent that out, announced it yesterday. We had 10 people sign up yesterday already. So we are trying to also make people more aware of the online services and how we use them.
Bob, for all the items in bold for the reporting, that is almost all automated through the GPS?
This is 100% automated.
Okay, so there's no manual entries?
No, the manual entries would happen, for example, let's say it's 3 driveways were missed, but the operators report when they don't do something. So the exceptions examples would be you know, there's an obstacle, we couldn't do the driveway. They'll note that down, and then that can be copied from the paper reports into this report. So there are tools for adding that in. We originally had talked about having the operators do it online, but we want them focused on safety and driving and not looking down at their phones or anything else. So they physically write down issues that they encounter, and then those can be manually entered in at a later date. Everything else is totally automated.
Okay. So everything you're working on, first of all, it's an amazing amount of work, as well, it seems like as always on this, both on your part, Bob, thank you, and the committee's part, Bertrand, and then also staff's part. I guess my concern about all of this is just staff time. That's I'd really like to understand. I know some of this is performance reporting is really important. And I'm glad that a lot of this is automated, but as with the contract, the whole thing with the contracts, the individual driveways and so on, for me, it's staff time. That's my concern, is how much time it takes to do these rather than attending to perhaps some other things. So
well,
when we talk in February, it might be nice to redo that.
Well, the goal of this was to reduce the staff time for curate, to do a good job in curation without taking a lot of staff time. So I would defer to Eric and Rick to comment, reply to you on in that regards.
Yeah, well, in February is fine. When you've got the data and so on, that's fine. But, and I know that you and Bertrand think that curation is very important. I appreciate that. But I also think that there are ways where all the detail may not be really so important. I mean, it just depends on what the homeowners are willing to accept in essence, like East Meadows, like what Palisades apparently is deciding to do. It basically does away with the need for curation.
Well, let me just push back on that a little bit. I mean, this is easier this year because Bertrand and I can work as a team on it, and that's saving a lot of time. But in the case of KMA, if they want to fairly charge for homeowners, some have driveways and some don't, and they're trying to figure out how to charge, we'd like to give them some confidence of saying, if you do this, there's a statistical evidence that this is fair, and we think there's a way to do that without requiring staff time.
Okay.
Bertrand?
Yeah, I think, I mean, clearly first, we all strive to be fair and accurate. I think I can speak for everyone here. And so there are, in the current system, some deficiencies that we want to fix, and they were put forward by the manual curation that was done. In the end, it doesn't amount to so much time, but the problem, we have to be somewhat accurate, so there is confidence in the system from the HOA. And I think that's critical. The system actually now is going to be, I mean, compared to the 64 hours that Eric said he spent last year, is going to be, I don't know, a couple of hours. We do spend some time trying to set up the system, but it's for the long run. It would run by itself. The only thing that the district will have to do is to enter the exception. We cannot do it automatically because it would basically, I mean, it'd be very difficult to do that automatically. Yeah.
Right.
So, and the exception need to be there to be fair. If some missed driveway are missed, whatever the reason, the system needs to know it. So what we have, for example, there is a sum of all the missed driveway, and then we have the number of exceptions. So automatically the system will flag if there is a big discrepancy between the number of missed driveway and the number of reported exceptions. And then someone look at it and can make a human judgment on what's going on.
Okay.
Well, we try to minimize the human input.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Eric, Rick, what I appreciate, and I think the board would appreciate, is your thoughts on staff time associated with the individual contracts. I just would like to know what that is. And, but I think that this work looks like good work, and I certainly think the buckets approach that you're taking is the right approach.
We'll definitely quantify that for February, but I will push back against Bertrand's comment. It's not, quote, just a couple hours.
Well, let's see what your thinking is in February.
So maybe I characterize what I said. Once the system will be into place, most of it will be automated, and then you only would have to input the exception. So I don't know how many hours would be that, but clearly much less than the 64 hours you spent last year.
Okay.
You agree with that, Eric?
I have a question.
Peter, yes.
Are we going to get to some point in time when we can be comfortable on a year-to-year average, so we don't have to go through this process every year? You know, for assessing driveways, I mean, are we going to do this forever?
No, I think we do what we do like with base rates. We have confidence in the structure, and then every couple of years we relook at it.
So how close are we to the point where you guys feel like these are you're comfortable with these numbers for the next 2 or 3 years? You know,
I
are you close to that?
Yeah, I think we'd be there. The change here is right now we come up with a target revenue for driveways and a target revenue for HOAs. We now can eliminate the need for separate targets. We just have one overall, and it's the same algorithm to figure it out for everything. So I think with these changes, if the board approves them, we've eliminated a lot of the, we've simplified things, and we've increased our confidence that it's accurate.
So that a customer in any homeowners association will be relatively secure that they're being treated fairly.
I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I believe we are getting there. Hopefully next year, maybe the year after.
Okay.
Okay.
Certainly the items that John pointed out in our summer board meeting, those will have been addressed as part of this.
Yeah, I think if the numbers stay fairly consistent or more correlated with snowfall, then you know, the homeowner should feel pretty comfortable, right? You know, that it's not just an algorithm or a GPS error or something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we've eliminated the 10% credit for having driveways.
Right.
So that's no longer a calculation. We actually have a measurement of how much time to actually deal with. And in February, you'll be able to see the difference between measuring it and the prior estimates.
Yep.
Okay, any other conversation about this? Okay, again, a big thank you to Bob and Bertrand and the committee and the staff for tackling this seemingly difficult topic. Okay, let's move on to item I, electric rate study methodology. Eric.
So the Finance Committee started considering this. We've gone over a few iterations about equivalent dwelling units and defining that. And so we started down the process of cost allocation to mirror the 218 process we did for water and wastewater, and looking at different scenarios. And I've been talking with Bertrand, and he suggested a couple others that we'll be able to run as we finesse this model. But in essence, we looked at a few things. We've made a few suggestions. So currently, the way our ordinance is written, that we look at a 3-year average of an individual customer usage divided by the 3-year average of all customer usage to define an EDU. This is anomalous to every other utility process. Generally, an EDU has the word dwelling in it, and it usually applies to the average residential use, the equivalent dwelling unit for an average resident. So one of the things we have been looking at is defining an EDU more clearly to be residential customers, to define an EDU. So that's one of the things we've discussed and looked at. We've talked about at finance and at the board previously. Another thing we did look at was what if we just, recognizing changes in COVID as has been talked about, and, high number of real estate sales, as we talked about a little bit before the meeting. What if we use only the prior year of customer usage over a 3-year residential customer usage to define ED? So that's something else we're looking at as well. We also investigated what is a minimum EDU. I looked to the water, wastewater models and what they've done. It may not be 100% analogous, but it is a way to look at it to define a minimum EDU. And so we're continuing to look into that. What's the right number for that so that we minimize the impacts to our customers as much as possible? The whole goal of this is not an increase in revenue for electricity, but a proper balancing based on the cost allocation method. So just getting into that briefly, this cost allocation table is similar to what we did in the wastewater study. Appropriately allocating things to where they should be. I did reach out to my energy executive course peers, and I got about 30 out of 44 responses. And one of the big changes, and for us, but not for anywhere else, is everybody's existing long-term debt is in their fixed rate, their base rate. That was consistent across the board for all the peers I reached out to. So that's one thing that this cost allocation does, which is what we also did for water and wastewater. One unique thing we do have is the USDA covenants and the tier ratios, and what that means ultimately. 5% in addition to our cost is one of them, but there's multiple ratios we have to satisfy, and they're evenly split in terms of impact relatively between base and use rate. So they have essentially a cost associated with them that we have to cover. And so with that, we looked at the cost allocation, and what we ultimately determined is the proper way. No proposed changes to the meter charge. The new base rate would account for 2.9 million roughly of our total income, and usage would account for about 1.8 of our total income. So we did just look at a couple scenarios. These are preliminary. Bob and I have been kicking these around with some rate model tools we have at our disposal, and just to see what would happen, what different things could look like. And Bob and I have since refined this even more. That'll be coming back to finance, but these are the first two we ran just to see. So we did the option one, the 3-year, three-year residential. We looked at a base rate of 100, a usage rate of 25.5 cents per kilowatt hour, an EDU defined based on the last 3 years average usage of residential customers. And we just used a minimum EDU of 0.8 just to see what that would do. And what it did, it came in close to our target goals, plus or minus from our target cost allocation goals. So that was a good starting point. When we did that, though, we did notice there were some severe increases on some of our customers. We did look at a lot of our year-round customers. That was one of our tests as we went through this, because that's been a concern voiced by the board. And I can tell you that, a very nice lady who lives year-round on Dangberg that everybody would know would see a modest increase of less than $40 a year under this model. Our operations manager, Brandy, would see a modest decrease. Peter would see a less than $20 increase a year. Bertrand would see a decrease, and I forget what number I told you, Bertrand, on that one.
Well, actually, that's not true, because currently I'm a net metering guy, so that'd be a significant increase for me. But that's okay. It was, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know you had solar, Bertrand. I didn't know you were a net meter.
Oh, okay.
So and then I looked at mine, and I would see a pretty substantive increase. I'm in that bottom category of low electric usage that would see a substantive increase. So that's one thing we want to refine. We want to limit the substantive increases as much as we can to mitigate the impact on our customers. We recognize, by the very nature of increasing the base rate, people that are only in the valley less than 20 days a year or 40 days a year, compared to the average customer who's in the valley about 100 days a year, they're going to see an increase because the base rate went up. That's just the nature of properly allocating the base rate. But looking at the minimum EDU is another way to look at it. Bertrand, he commented in an email chain that maybe 0.1 is too coarse of an item. So there's different things that we're going to be playing with as we bring this back to finance. Just real quickly, we did, just to close out option 2, we looked at only 1 year of usage versus 3 years residential. It would need a base rate of about 106 and a usage rate of 0.27. The reason that the base rate, even though the base rate went up while the income actually went down, is because basically the coarseness of how we're doing this. It's plus or minus. It's acceptable decimal dust in my mind. So yes, there's a disparity there, but it's not a big deal. 3,000 out of 3 million. So I can live with that accuracy. So just looking at that, this would also hit our target goals based on the cost allocation method. And since we're not in a normal, in the water industry, we call it a diurnal curve, but since our electric usage is unlike anything else, time of use traditional models don't work for us. They're just simply, it's just not how this district functions, and we're very anomalous. I mean, maybe bears like us, maybe mammoth, but not many other places. So with all that said, we just, we're still refining that. As I said, one of our biggest things is to mitigate impacts as much as we can to the biggest number of our customers. Again, we're not looking to increase revenue. We're just looking to reallocate revenue more appropriately. Some benefits that this will see will, make electricity, which is more, friendly, as Bertrand and a few other people have alluded to earlier today, to the environment, will make it, more reasonable to consider electric over propane, which I think is an important policy goal that the board has stated. It will also stabilize rate income for the district in strange situations, whatever those might be, whether it be COVID or any force majeure, would be something we would be able to mitigate with this constant income. And it's very similar to what a lot of water districts did in the droughts. When they saw a decrease in revenue, they had to shove it over to their base rate so that they could remain financially viable and stable. So a lot more to come, but I don't know if there's any questions.
Yeah, how severe is the impact to the occasional use residents?
So it depends. We have a few models, so I'll just generically speak. Some people that spend 5 days in Kirkwood could see their bill go up by $60 a month. My bill, for example, would probably go up if we went to I'll just use the option 1 because that's the one I ran the most. So my bill, I use very little electricity, even though I'm here all the time. I'm pretty miserly when it comes to that. But my bill would go from 80 to about 120, just based on my usage, to give you. And I'm not the worst case by any stretch, but that's what would happen to my bill.
But Eric, let me add some other things to that. So let's say someone has a house here and isn't here for 12 months. What's the cost to us for having them be available to have electricity? They're currently paying $14.69 a month for the ability to have electricity. Is that a fair price, or is that too low? So in one sense, we could try to make this so they don't pay any more than they have been. The other is, it's possible to consider the fact that the people that aren't here, they have a share in making sure that electricity is available. And is that share, is $14.69 a fair price? Because what we have right now is 80% of our costs are fixed. If we didn't sell a kilowatt hour for a year, we still owe at 8% of our costs, and we only 5% of our revenue is fixed. And that imbalance for most customers can be adjusted on average, so there's no effect on them. But for the customers that use almost no electricity, there will be some impact. And as a board, we'll need to decide whether that is some impact, how much impact should that be? But I would argue that $14.69 may be too low a price to pay for the ability to have electricity.
I fully agree with that. However, I mean, this is a good starting point where we have as a discussion here. What's missing here, I think, is some guidance from the board, 5 board members, on what are we trying to achieve. Because there are actually side effects to this, what we are doing here. And I would like to have, I think the way how we actually present this, change these things would impact, for example, indeed, the financial stability of the district, which is a good thing to address. The fairness, we want to make sure that will serve capacity is actually charged properly, and that's basically the argument that Bob was just making. Environmental impact. This is how we can actually improve our environmental impact. Another one would be the encouragement for conservation. I mean, actually, every public utilities have programs to encourage conservation. We have also the concept of trying to encourage people to use greener energy system with heat pump and other systems, so trying to move away from the propane. That's another argument. And there is another one which I forgot, but basically all this, I'd like to have a sense from the board of how all these parameters and others are important and should be taken in consideration when we do this rate. Now, on the specific model that are shown here, I think there are a number of issues. I don't think it's worth going in detail of what's going on here because they are just a starting point and they'll be refined. But we need to, I think that the Finance Committee would need some guidance on what are we trying to achieve here, and I think that's missing.
Well, I think that what's the basic thing that's trying to be achieved is to make sure that our the financial aspect of our electricity remains viable come pandemic, wildfire, or whatever may happen. Is that right, Bob? I mean, and Eric. That's the starting point.
The starting point is the fact that if the state had said outdoor activities are banned, right, we would face bankruptcy, and we would face an inability to operate unless the federal government chose to waive our mortgage obligations. We can't survive some of the potential situations. So I think this year may be fine, but it's a warning call. So that's the first thing. The second is that solar customers right now we just have I guess 9 or 10 houses with solar, but if a large facility decided to go solar, they would not be paying almost nothing towards the cost of the grid, even though they're still using the grid. So we're trying to think about that as well. And in addition, the analysis that I worked on for heat pumps is you really have to get somewhere in the 15 to 25 cent range for a heat pump to be competitive with what we think propane will be in the future. I don't think propane will stay this cheap, but right now it's too strong a disparity. So if we look at electric vehicle charging or electric heat, we'd like to have it be closer to affordable than what it is right now. And as the valley grows, our fixed costs stay the same, and that allows us to spread them across a larger base. So moving toward a more affordable usage rate is certainly part of the goal.
Yeah. Definitively, we need to improve the base fee. I think that's critical. But, we just did COVID and it went actually much better than we were fearing for. So every business has some risk. And what I'm concerned is some model basically say that, let's say you have a death in a family, people can't come for 1 year, they would pay basically the same thing for the coming year. And same thing, people try to conserve money by being conscientious about how much energy they use. It would not change if we use 3 years average before, that means it's almost up to 4 years before it's going to take people. Basically, you are killing the incentive for people to conserve. So that I think is wrong. I think we have some stewardship here. We have to get some program to improve conservation and greenness in general. I do agree that 1469 is way too low. It should be increased. I think what we are showing up here is going too far if you compare to PG&E. So I checked because I keep hearing that PG&E are 11 cents, 18 cents. So I checked specifically for both time of use, not relevant for us. I agree with Eric. We don't have, it's not, first our cost doesn't change. So time of use is actually to try to encourage people to use energy at a time when it costs less. We don't have a change on cost. So, but even if you take the standard rate, there is 3 tiers and it's 25 cents, 29 cents and 30, I don't remember, 39 or 38, whatever. So this is a PG&E rate. And they have no base fee. They have a $10 minimum. And that actually was put within an M2 to make sure that people contribute to the grid, people with solar. But I think we need to be reasonable. Personally, I would like to see a number where we go for the tier ratio of 50-50. Basically, what kind of rate and base fee would we get if you were going to be at a 50% ratio for base and usage, that the USDA tier ratio is? It'd be interesting to see that. But bottom line is, we need to make a decision on what are we trying to achieve. I don't think it's reasonable. I mean, if you really want to go all the way through, we would have to put 80% of the base fee to cover our fixed cost. And this is clearly unreasonable, in my opinion.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, let me just respond on PG&E,
okay,
since I'm a PG&E. I'm a PG&E solar customer with an electric vehicle. My average for the year is 21 cents. Just to give you a number.
Go online. Actually, have the actual rate. 25 cents is the minimum for the first rate. If you are within the base consumption, then it's 29.
I'm just reporting my actual bills. I'm not making this up. I'm on a time of use with solar, and that's what I pay. I'm just giving you an actual data point.
It's not relevant to Kirkwood.
Can I ask a question? I see Doug here and Bob and
Preston's had his hand up for a while too, Eric.
Oh, I'm sorry. Preston, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a great dialogue. It's interesting and not an easy topic to kind of get your hands around. So I coming at this without the full knowledge of what the analysis is that's been done to date. But on first glance, the general comment would be that a higher base rate would seem to make very good sense to me up at Kirkwood, given the fact that there's such a high relative cost of the infrastructure, i.e. fixed costs, relative to the number of people who live full time. So that absolutely seems like the reasonable and prudent thing to do. However, I've never done a full rate. I think maybe Doug is still on the call. Maybe he has, or somebody else who's consulted to the industry. But I've never heard of a base rate in any way, at that level that you're modeling, at least at $100, and have specific concerns that I think Bertrand noted around how that might disincentivize folks to put on solar. I know that there's tension for every utility with regards to net metering, but I think that's the trend. And I think somehow or another that has to get contemplated and figured out. And that's not just for the PUD here, but for every utility across the country. So I think that's an important function. And I also think that the comment about heat pumps and electrification is critical. And I definitely want to see that incentivized. But frankly, that can happen, I think, probably, anyway, probably in a range more equivalent to what is also happening across the country. And, PG&E rates, you can still go electric and do well at those rates. So my general sense would be that understanding kind of where we stand relative to PG&E and their rates. Also, I don't know the procurement cost for the PUD and how they compare to PG&E's who sets their rates. That's another question. And then just in general, it seems like municipals out there would have maybe some comparable cost structures that might warrant understanding. So that's all more data, but I think it seems like those might be areas to look at in terms of finding the right mix. So increase, but the 22 or 25 cents with $100 base rate feels particularly punitive relative to what the Valley might want to have in terms of overall greenhouse gas emission rate targets as well. Thanks.
Thanks.
I'll just
Thanks,
respond
Preston.
to a couple of those, if I might, Eric.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Preston. Thank you,
all the
Preston.
people on that haven't really been through this whole process. So in short, I guess the simplest thing is we're not comparable to anyone else, and maybe Alaska, remote parts of Alaska, maybe remote parts of Hawaii, just based on our small customer base and our huge debt obligation, there's no one else to compare us to. So while it's nice sometimes to look at other utilities to see what their base rates are, they don't have $60 million worth of debt on 800 customers. So that's a huge component to consider. And when we look at this, it just makes us very, very unique in when we have to calculate this.
So I have it's probably a naive question, but I'm sure Bob or Preston or Doug will be able to answer it. So conservation has been necessary in the past and is necessary now for a couple of reasons. One is, for a while, sometimes the state doesn't have the capacity to satisfy electric demand. That's one. And the other is the carbon emissions, if it's coming from fossil fuels. But for example, if I am willing to bear the cost of voluntarily buying RECs, which we have that program, that means that 30% right now and going up over some years to 60% of our electricity is going to be from renewables specifically. And if I make up the rest through the purchase of RECs, then from a green point of view, does it matter if I conserve or not?
It does.
No, I'd like to hear from Doug or Preston or Bob on this.
Well, let me answer that as a society, yes, because you have to design for the maximum demand. And so if everyone used twice as much power, you'd have to design a system to cover double the maximum demand. So from a year-to-year perspective, you totally offsetting all of your greenhouse gas emissions, that's good. But from a societal viewpoint and from a grid management, the less energy that has to be moved around and the more flexibility with the timing, the more affordable it is to manage the electric grid. So using less energy is always better from that perspective. Meeting the greenhouse gas requirements from day to day. As you've seen, we've had very little uptake on our voluntary program, and it's a 1% cost to be 100% carbon neutral, and the uptake is very marginal. So, and the pushback we get on the surveys is that it's already so expensive. I don't want to spend anymore. So I think the message we're getting from customers is they're not quite there to be 100% carbon neutral, because as a utility, we could do that at a very marginal change in price if people wanted it.
Okay. I told you it was a naive question. I just didn't know the answer to it.
No, it's not naive. It's
good question.
Doug has his hand up, Eric.
Doug. Okay, Doug.
Well, thanks for letting me the opportunity to speak on this. This is, as I mentioned earlier, this is something I'm pretty passionate about and had some experience with. And to Bob's point, I think when you think about the design that you're thinking about, there's the peak demand, which is basically offsetting the new construction. And then there's the volumetric consumption, right? Which is essentially what it seems like your base rate's trying to achieve at, because it's not completely fixed, right? Because it moves by consumption in some ways. And I think that the difference between energy conservation is volumetric, and then kilowatts versus kilowatt hours essentially is what we're talking about. And that's where the timing aspect comes, and you can offset new generation units that only run for hours a year. And that comes into the environmental aspects of this as well. I mean, in terms of the rates itself, I mean, some of the things that jumped out at me when I looked at this, where you're decreasing from 66.5 or to 22 or so, and what's
27.
27 cents in some cases.
25 to 27.
25, yeah, exactly. Sorry, I'm 2s and 5s mixed up there.
But
that's
small type.
Pretty significant change. Most my experiences, that's pretty large of just a delta in terms of the volumetric component, and just thinking about what is the price elasticity of demand here, and you might have data on that, and what is that being modeled into this. And I tried to back out some of the calculations here. It seems like in some cases you're assuming it's fairly inelastic. In some cases actually positively elastic, potentially in terms of one of the calculations. But I guess just thinking about how the incentivization structure comes in is important. As an economist, I always come back to like, what's the cost of service and what are you charging for these things? So saying that the base metering cost as a purely fixed, like completely fixed, the costs that should get included in that are things like, for a new customer who comes on, what is the cost to service that? And that can be billing, it could be the meter, it could be the cost of the distribution line to that unit, for example, as well. And so I don't know that I would say that it should just be more, because I think it can be more based on a cost basis. And then you have the fully volumetric costs that we know, the cost of energy procurement. And then everything that's a system-wide is a fixed cost, but it's a system-wide fixed cost, which is very different than I think the customer-specific fixed costs that come on. And so those are the types of things that I would think about. One of the maybe perverse impacts that could happen with such a high fixed cost is maybe disconnects. And I'm not well versed in this, but to the point of I think Bertrand made, is that someone's not here for 12 months. Maybe they're not here for 4 months, and they just say, I want to disconnect because it's going to cost me $400 to have no service essentially. Maybe I'll disconnect and try to reconnect. And I don't know if that's something that would be something that we would see a lot of, but that's just something that came to mind to me as maybe a perverse outcome of having a very high fixed rate.
Not worth it with connection fees.
Yeah,
well,
let me just mention, yeah, when a building wants to get service, then there's a connection fee that covers their buying into the overall infrastructure. And if they exit and then reconnect, they're going to repay that. So you would have to be gone for many years.
Yeah.
To break even on
doesn't
that.
allow
And during that time period, yeah.
The ordinance does not allow disconnection currently.
Gotcha. Okay. Well,
for example, those homes that blew up, they're still paying their base rate even though there's no home. So there is no, under our current ordinance, there is no disconnection from the grid.
Wow.
Yeah. So there is a question over what percentage to be, but our goal is just to give an update to the board, and then in February we have a modeling tool. We could model it in real time at a board meeting if people wanted to do that. But we're trying to understand the range of things. But I'm also looking at it, trying to say, how do we, without having a separate meter and tariff, because having a separate meter is really expensive, how do we make it more practical to have an electric vehicle in Kirkwood and use electric heating? Whether the heat pumps work out or not, resistive heating is obviously incredibly efficient, but at 66 cents, it just, some customers currently do that, but it's just so high. So those are the trade-offs we're trying to make so the board can make an informed decision.
I think Preston, were you trying to ask a question?
Yeah, just one comment. I appreciated Bob's comment earlier about conservation. I totally agree. One observation, however, and I have not looked specifically at the RECs. I'm not sure, actually I have, but I don't think I saw what they are, but not all RECs are created equal. And it's very important that we provide.
Yeah, we do tier 1.
Okay.
only. Only tier one.
I didn't see that when I looked through the documentation that I could find, and I think that's actually an important element for people also to make a decision whether to participate, is to understand really what they're buying. And then the question I had was, I also have looked through the PUD site, and I was not able, as a consumer, to find out what the relative mix of energy and the greenhouse gas contributions are that the PUD actually currently utilizes. I heard on, I think, an earlier call, maybe that there's a scheduling, coordinator, maybe Shell was involved, but I don't know the procurement contracts. So there's a question and also maybe a request to the board to consider publishing more about the actual usage and greenhouse gas impact relative to the energy mix in the procurement strategy.
I think we publish that annually, and
We put it. It's published annually.
Yep.
But
this is the rec and the carbon offset. That's been in the newsletter as well annually for the last.
But the annual report though doesn't give a lot of information.
Yeah.
And
It gives what we're legally required, and then all of our greenhouse gas reduction comes from purchasing recs.
right, that's that. Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was going to say. But because at this point it's only 30%, or I think it's 30%, right, Brandy? 33%. And the other 2/3, we don't know where it comes from, so we can't. Right, that's what it is. It's
the
unknown
2/3
sources.
is the general grid mix.
Right.
And so we can't count that, otherwise it would be double counting, because someone else is accounting for it. Someone else is buying the environmental properties. We're just buying the raw power.
Right.
So the energy mix at Kirkwood does not directly mirror a PG&E mix?
Not necessarily.
We're off the general grid on the day-ahead market.
Okay.
So we can't. We know on average, right? California has days where it has hours where it's 100% renewables. So we are just the grid average for that. But for our own accounting purposes, we can't claim any credit out of that. Our credit only comes from buying the recs. We don't have any direct contracts with renewable electricity because at our size, plus all of our demand is in the winter.
Right.
Our demand in the summer is just a rounding error.
Yeah.
So,
okay, so Bertrand, go ahead.
Yes, what I'd like to, as a general direction to improve, I think, in this model is to think further on the will serve capacity. Because I think that's something also that can be part of the base rate. And currently, unfortunately, the district doesn't have a clear picture of the will serve capacity for each customer. And I think that's something the district need to work on. I mean, we need to know who has a 70 kilowatt, and some others 100, some others 200, some others, I don't know, maybe more on commercial. But clearly, the will serve capacity should be a driver for the fairness of this base fee. And it's not yet now. We have this EDU system, which does some of it, but not to the granularity it has to be fair for the proper will serve capacity of each unit.
Well, Bertrand, we did that already. We went through and calculated it for every location, and it didn't give us a methodology that would make it very fair. So we have looked at that already.
Well, I've not seen any of it until it's possible, but I accept your comment indeed. But what I'm saying is, typically, utilities actually basically take in consideration the will serve capacity for the connection fee and for the base fees, if there is any. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. We looked at that and it didn't work for us.
Well, I'd like to see some number. I have not been exposed to any.
What it comes down to, the short version of what Bob's saying is we would have to spend an inordinate amount of man hours to calculate based on the fact that we don't know how the MU system was built. So for example, let's say, Bertrand, you and 5 of your neighbors are on one size transformer, and over in East Meadows, 10 people are on that same size transformer, which goes to their potential capacity demand. So those 10 people would pay half of what those 5 are because of that transformer capacity demand on it. So it's just it's data we don't have, unfortunately. We have the meter sizes, the amperage drops, but to look at those, it's 8, Brandy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 8 times what our actual delivery capacity is if you looked at it in that method. So clearly that's not correct way to look at it. So we did discuss different ways to look at EDUs, and this was the simplest and fairest and easiest to implement.
Well, I still think maybe it's going to take time than a year, but this is something that KMPD should know. You should know for every customer what is the size of their connection.
I totally agree, Bertrand, but
Yeah.
the question is how much money and staff time do we want to spend on something on that issue? It really is what it comes down to. What's the priority for the board in terms of how the district spends its staff time and revenue?
Okay, so what sounds like to me is for February, maybe a succinct paragraph on the goals of this potential change, and of course the scenarios. And Bob, it's interesting to know if you could show the modeling tool live. That'd be an interesting thing to have. Anything else on this? I mean, I think, let me just ask the board, is there a consensus that we do want some change? We don't know what the magnitude or scope of the change is quite yet, but is it the sense of the board that this direction at least is correct? Does anybody object to that?
Does this have to go through a Prop 218 approval, vote and everything?
No.
We're going to treat
Our
it like it
electric and
does, but
propane-
it doesn't require it.
Right. Yeah. Bob, exactly right. What Bob said.
So we don't have to
but
sell
we're
this to
gonna do
the
it.
customers.
Yeah, we do.
We have to sell it to them, or do
We
we have to
do, but
explain
they
it to
don't
them?
have a legal
Okay.
legal 218 process, but
Okay.
we're going to pretend that they do.
Okay.
So
So that-
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm in support of the general direction here. I still think there is some significant work to do to tune things so we minimize side effect and that impact some people too hard. And that's certainly, I'm concerned of making sure people have an incentive to conserve. I'm concerned that fairness with a small studio of 200 square foot paying a base fee, that's fair compared to a mansion, if I can say that. It's just that we need to make the detail, the devil is in the detail. So we could make it work, but it has to be tuned properly.
And I think that's what the goal is over the next month that Bob and Eric
Well,
have.
all right, and the other takeaway I'm taking from this is, Bertrand, you'd like us to model where 50% of our fixed costs are covered by the
Yes, please. That'd be interesting to see where the number fall.
Well,
Okay.
I think there's,
I don't think that's legally defensible to do that. I would have a problem doing that. I just don't think.
Just to see the number, just to see the number.
I think it's just to show what it would be.
Yeah.
Right.
I think for the modeling, it'd be helpful. I think the things that we've talked about here, how it would impact individual residence owners is important. But I also think part of the model that would be useful would be see how much financial protection would KMPUD get based on different assumptions about reduction in utility use by the resort, for example, that the resort was going to close. So we could also balance how much of that financial protection are we getting versus the impact to the individual customer.
Right. Okay. And John, at the next finance meeting, we'll be running the model and having this discussion.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, risk is a factor indeed, but there is risk we would not be able to avert. if the resort close, I don't think the rate is going to save us.
Okay. Why don't we, I think that Finance Committee and staff probably have the direction, a variety of directions to take this in. So let's move on now to item 10, General Manager's Report.
Oh, well, I'm going to keep this really short. So I did attend a few Aqua Board meetings along with the carb fleet rule meeting, which is going to be very important to us. That working group is continuing to look at issues that could potentially have a huge impact on all municipal districts. In terms of their fleet requirements, there's currently staff at the California Air Resources Board is being very secretive about what they're considering. We have had a few meetings with their staff, and they're holding their cards close to the vest. I think they're waiting to see what the governor comes out with relative to his budget, which is now out. So we'll see how that goes, but we're watching that. So very carefully. As I think the board knows, we did have a power outage the other day, and we're unable to reconnect everything. We sent staff out to go look at it. This is during the giant windstorm. I sent the videos to the board of my lovely drive where I almost had trees falling on me. That was really fun. But I just wanted to share, we had our tree faller, who did all the work removing the trees for us, actually went out and did a little work heard from PG&E and said that there was a leaning tree right next to our substation. And so he was actually able to go out yesterday in the snow for us, and at the cost of $4,000, get that successfully felled without hitting any of our lines. PG&E's line their underbelt did get hit multiple times, but I'd like to read to you what our tree faller, licensed timber operator, said. The straight tree that you see in the picture could be compromised as the three cedars next to it were uprooted, and that often weakens the root of the remaining trees. So he doesn't have the pictures of the tree on the ground, but it was getting dark when they were done. Also, you folks were pretty lucky during the storm. 3 large trees blew over parallel to the lines, and 2 of the trees fell between the 2 sets of lines. So we really dodged a bullet in terms of our lines getting hit. And this is despite a registered professional forester going out and looking at the unhealthy trees. So these were healthy trees, or relatively healthy trees with poor root structures that basically fell over, and we dodged a bullet. PG&E did not, but we did. We will be having him go out and fall, with permission from U.S. Forest Service, which we did get for the emergency tree, fall this remaining tree. Hopefully after the snow clears, but I don't think he's gonna be able to get out before the next storm, possibly Monday. We'll have to wait and see, but if he can, we'll have that one felled as well once we get permission. So biggest winds I've ever seen in all my years living up here in the foothills. And yeah, any questions on that?
Thank heavens we got those trees taken out that we did get taken out finally.
And that's all I had.
Okay.
Just briefly, the election for Aqua Board is coming up again. So assuming the board feels that we've received some value from me being on the board, and I would strongly argue we have, we'll need to do another resolution in April or May, affirming the board's commitment to having me on the running for the Region 3 board again.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think it's been very valuable.
And I did travel to Israel, Bertrand.
Is there,
It's not a good time to travel, don't worry.
Eric, is there any update on the financing for the wastewater treatment plant?
The preliminary engineering report, we received comments back from USDA. And so our consultant, Stantec, implemented all of their changes that were requested. After I reviewed them, they were pretty de minimis, and it has been resubmitted to USDA late last week. And we're coordinating for a meeting with the loan officer, the head engineer, our consultant and myself so we can get that ball rolling.
Okay, I just realize, I mean, I'm seeing interest rates inch up a bit. I don't know if it affects what this guaranteed rate would be, but sooner the better, as they say.
If I could figure out a way to make the federal government move faster, I would quit here and I'd start marketing that.
Okay, yeah, okay. Any questions or comments for Eric on the general manager's report?
Oh, just the current rate's 1.84%, and then we pay a small thing on top of that.
Yeah.
So it's still way below what our current lending is.
Right.
And there would be the interim loan with someone. But.
Yeah.
Okay, move on to the operations report. Rick or Brandy? Rick, I guess that's you.
It'll be Rick, and just being sensitive to everybody's time today. I know it's been a long meeting. I really don't have anything to add at this time, unless there's any questions for the board for operations.
Was there any substantial threat with trees falling last storm within the valley for the KMPUD operation?
No, sir. We didn't discover any issues or problems.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Rick, thank you. Let's move on to standing committee reports, planning.
I'm sorry.
Didn't meet.
Standing committee reports,
planning did not meet last month.
Okay. Finance. Bob?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was waiting for Standish.
Yeah, I do want to make an announcement that Bob Epstein is our treasurer now for the next 10 months.
I'm totally unprepared. I don't remember anything that we didn't already talk about. Eric, help me out.
One thing we'll be bringing back next month is the credit card.
Oh, that's right.
The who pays the credit card fees? It's generally costing the district about $30,000 a year, and when revenue's that tight, is that something we should continue to do?
Right. Thank you very much. I'll be better prepared next month.
No, thanks, Bob, and thanks for being willing to step up into the Standish's position.
Yeah.
I know operations has not met, right, Peter?
That's correct. We're going to meet next week.
We meet next week. Personnel met, but all we did is we went over goals. John, you are now part of finance and personnel.
Congratulations.
I won that prize.
So you're joining me on personnel.
So you need to add the fact he's resigning from planning, I suppose.
Yeah, I'll be going over that pretty soon.
Yeah, but you have several people that say that they would attend planning, so it'll be a great source of inspiration, I think.
Just to add to that, Bertrand's right. I've already received 3 emails of interest from 3 of our candidates. So one has offered to serve on planning or finance, and 2 have requested planning. So appreciate that, because that will even out the committees a bit and not be so heavy. So. But that'll be up to each committee to review, and then ultimately the board to vote on next month's consent. But I'm very encouraged by the candidates that have shown interest. I really appreciate that.
Communications committee.
So the things we haven't covered, one is we are into the sort of the rationalization of our website. So we've installed some changes already, and then we're going through and redesigning the menu structure and doing some major changes that we plan to roll out towards the middle of this year. We have done, as part of the newsletter, we've taken the 5 biggest questions that came up from the survey, and we've now answered them all. We've done 1 issue a month with that, and then we just did our update on snow removal and the email that went out for focusing on the driveways. So those are done.
That was very good. That was a very good communication.
Thank you.
Okay, so for the standing committees, here's sort of the lineup now as I see it. So operations, really, there's no change. Peter chairs. I'm with Peter. Then Carolyn, Howard, Christian, Frank, Dan Deemer from Vail are the community members. On planning, Bertrand chairs. Peter is with Bertrand. We have Nate Whaley, Greg Kiskinen, and Tina Coleman as community members. And I know Patrick and Preston both expressed interest during the meeting to join planning. Finance, Bob is now the chair. John joins him, and Jack Longinati, Frank Petroncelli, and our community members. We need to make Standish official, and we've already made Eric Tiffany official from Vail, and so there's one opening there. Communications, Bob is chair. Bertrand joins him. We could use a replacement for Cheryl. Sandy Goldberg and Ann Oppenheimer are the other two community members right now. So that could use a little bit of addition there. And personnel, I chair, and John will join me and personnel. So those are the standing committees. You know, something, I skipped right over the Economic Development Committee. So let me, in the agenda item, which was 10J, and now is a good time to discuss that briefly, or we can defer this if it's getting too late. But the topic is Bruce Gianola has gone now, and he had really provided the energy and some structure to the economic development effort, the group. The question is what do we as a district, what role do we want to play, and what do we want the economic development group to be, if it is even an economic development group? Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's just some kind of coordinating organization that brings people together periodically from the different kinds of organizations that affect us, the counties, the Caltrans, the sheriff, and so on. KCA resort. The question is, what do we want it to be? And that was the topic of conversation, but I think it's probably a bigger conversation, and maybe we should defer that to February, just given the time. And I'd like Bertrand to be able to, because he is our member right now of the committee. So Eric, what do you think? February? Would that be a better idea?
Yeah, we can defer it to February. I know we're waiting on KCA to meet. I did talk to Dolan Beckel, who's the new president, and I think you saw the email, Eric. He definitely was interested in KCA continuing on helping. He didn't know if that was going to be him or someone else from that board. So perhaps we'll have an answer with a little more clear guidance of how KCA is going to approach this after their meeting.
Well, and if Terry and Jeff are able to join us in February, I'd be interested in their perspectives too on the usefulness of these twice a year meetings, or the type of core committee that Bruce set up, or the subcommittees, and so on and so forth. So I think it's an important discussion. You know, it came up in our interview process for the people interested in the board, and we're just not sure what to do with it at this point, and what the board's and what the district's role should be. Okay, so we'll have that conversation in February. Okay. Okay, we're now go on to the temporary advisory committee reports, and there are two, and this is where we can talk about the OGALS committee. This is the committee that was intended to be a 2 to 3 month committee chaired by Peter to explore ideas for using the $178,000 that I think it's ours as long as we apply for something that's eligible for that money. And the reason it's an ad hoc committee and not part of our regular committee is I thought it was really important to have a variety of people on it that aren't on the committee. Specifically some people who live in the valley much or most of the time and might make actual real use of whatever it is that we may suggest. This is about recreational facilities. So that was the reason. I have no problem at all that the Oak Owls ad hoc committee be on the planning committee agenda for the next couple of months and field conversation at the planning committee level before coming to the board. That would be just fine by me.
Yeah. The first step is to be able to have some information. I never received anything on that topic.
It's been in the board packets for over a year, Bertrand. You have received it.
You know, there's been information on the Oak Owls thing, the $178,000. There's not, you're right, there's not a lot of detailed information. But I think that
yeah, so at least, okay, let's refresh it. Let's have a link of what we are trying to achieve. I mean, what is eligible and what the time frame and all these things. It'd be nice to have some refreshment on this information if it was already shared.
Okay, so my suggestion is that that be part of the planning committee agenda, and Peter and can report on that. Okay.
That sounds good.
But I'm very pleased, Peter. First of all, I'm very pleased that we have the membership we do. I mean, Peter, Dan Deemer, Tommy Baggett, who's taken an active role, and
right.
Is it Carolina or Carolina? Carolina from KMA. I think that's great. I think we're going to get some good ideas for how we might use that money.
Well, she's giving us feedback on, she has teenage kids. You know, we're spending a lot of money on the playground. That's essentially for younger kids. And we kicked around some ideas. The most viable one that we came up with was to do some improvements in the meadow on the trail system, possibly constructing a footbridge across the north end of the valley where the lower east lift is, you know, where the old corral fence posts are still there.
Oh yeah, oh sure.
The idea is to unite the east side with the west side and get more community involvement, you know, some of the separation. But we don't know who has the rights to the meadow because it's a wetlands. So we have to get a lot of clarification before we can, you know, make any steps forward. And then I would recommend that we interact with the communications committee and do a survey.
Great. I mean, I'm pleased that you're generating ideas. I know that there are some restrictions about where we can have facilities and ownership and leases and all that kind of thing.
Right, exactly.
But I think you guys will work that out and come back with a great set of recommendations.
Well, that's the good thing. We have people from KCA involved and people from Vail involved. So hopefully we can work out some of the restrictions, see what's possible.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, Peter. And then the other one we have on here is Summer Festival. And Rick, I hope you can give me some comfort that somehow we're going to get along without Cheryl.
Somehow we're going to manage. We do have the 2021 Summer Festival first committee meeting coming up on February 11th at 11 a.m. And it's open to anyone and everyone. So if there's anybody at the board meeting today would like to attend that meeting, they're welcome to, and I can have Jess send you an email invite. But we did have a successful second silent auction thanks to Cheryl and company. And I don't have the exact number, but I think it was close to 2,000. I don't know if Kelly's still on there or not. So we'll get a recap to the existing Summer Festival Committee on last year's event and talk about ideas for this year. And then at the next board meeting, we can kind of give you a recap of how things went last year. But I am pleased to say that we are very grateful for the Type 6 fire truck that's sitting in the fire bay downstairs, which was 100% done by the Summer Festival last year. And the volunteers on the numerous calls we've responded to so far, just love that machine. It's just a great vehicle for us. So thank you to the community.
Yeah, that's great.
That's all I have.
That's great. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to general discussion. Does anyone on the board have an item that they'd like to bring up? I just have one thing. This has to do with heretofore what we've always had to do when water or wastewater has run short of funds of cash, gone negative. We've borrowed from electric, and that borrowing has always been needed to have a plan to pay it back with some amount of interest. There was a recent lawsuit that was settled up in Reading that basically says, and Eric, you may have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but it basically says that if as long as the source of revenue is not from ratepayers, that revenue can actually be transferred, say, into a general fund, or in our case, could be transferred into another enterprise fund, just transferred without that loan obligation going along with it. So the reason I asked, I saw this article in a local newspaper. I talked to Eric about it. We talked to Dick Shanahan about it yesterday. And since in many years, a lot of the revenue, some of the revenue that goes in the electric is from property taxes, that if we account for how much of the property tax revenue has accumulated in the electric enterprise fund, if we wanted to transfer funds to water and wastewater from that amount, that could just be done without being a loan, if we chose it not to be a loan. In addition, if Caltrans connects, that revenue too could be eligible for that kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm not saying that it's the best use for the funds if we want to try to pay off debt and so on. I'm just saying that it's a new piece of flexibility that we have that I think is that's good to know about. Eric, did I explain that properly?
Yeah, and then the only thing I would add on that is the reason Caltrans, if they connect, would be eligible is because that would be a contract service to Caltrans. They would not be a retail customer in the traditional sense, because we can't backfeed them. If KM Green goes down, we can't backfeed them from the powerhouse. So therefore, they're a special customer subject to outages, but via contract.
Okay, anyone else have any items? Bertrand?
Yes, I would like just to have a recommendation for the snow removal staff. So one thing I'd be curious over time, maybe through that seasons once we get snow, is to keep track of the impact the in-residency system has on the efficiency of the operation. I'm not asking for an answer now. I'm just I have a concern that it has actually some detrimental effect, but I may be wrong. So I just hope that the staff keep an eye on that and to see how that system impact the efficiency of the operations for snow removal.
Okay. Anything else? If not, I'm going to adjourn this meeting before noon in time for lunch.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. See you next month. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Oh, hey,
Bye.
John.
Yes.
Before you go, can you just, are you in the Valley this week or next week?
Probably not.
Okay, so Jess will reach out to you, and we found out that we can do your oath of office via Zoom. It's permitted.
Okay.
So she'll reach out to you and find a time where you guys can Zoom together and she can administer the oath of office to you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.